The girl comes down the stairs, remembering what happened. Hearing the sounds from the room, she realizes that he is not a real woman. She realizes that someone is engaged in an intimate business with a girl. It opens the door. It was in the movie or just in a dream. But if someone saw it, it was a dream. Consciousness is now. She suddenly wakes up, breathing hard, realizing that it is the same dream again. A dream in which her husband with another woman. She probably shook for a moment, grabs his own, the phone, and notices that the break is almost over. She gets up and ready. It reminds yourself that you need to get back to work. Suddenly, he hears the voice calling her. They turn to it, calling Nayu. She returns and sees her boss. Naesao congratulates him respectfully. He invites her to go out, inviting to come in, saying that you need to talk. As soon as they find themselves inside, pressing her with money, reminding that she is not a good person. Ante, she remembered, has always received calls from collectors. The fact that she asked for advance. He asks if 1.5 million will be enough. Then he grunts dissatisfied about how it was urgent to withdraw money because she asked not to put them in her account. He acknowledges that she is very hardworking and does not want to lose an employee who has already become part of the family. He bows to the SU low in gratitude and hides money in a coat. The chief is wondering if her financial difficulties are still ongoing. He replies on hell that yes, explaining that because of high interest rates, it is not easy to repay debts. He notes that he heard that her husband had recently found a job. Norisu. She clarifies that her husband is still on internship, so it is not easy to receive a stable income. However, she assures that the man works carefully and soon everything will work. Hiss goes out, and the chief watches her, noting how she works tirelessly without rest. He quietly says that her devotion inspires him to work more hard. Nahis is waving this, offering to return to business. Meanwhile, near the counter when the waiter notices visitors and asks loudly, now his suit adds 2 more portions of pork belly to the order. On the next table, the girl quietly asks her neighbor why he gave her all the food, because he ate almost nothing. The guy smiles and reassures her, saying that she cares about his friends. Feed him. Science A follows them and thinks that lovers of couples are beautiful, regardless of whether they are their first novel or the third, because their hearts shine to unison. Maybe it's because youth itself is beautiful. It's time of passionate love and painful separation. She thinks, or does that mean that her warm life has been flourishing? She reflects on whether she has lost her attractiveness, remembering the scene where she is. Diff says that Nakesu's girlfriend, Hajon, suddenly screams at her, indignant that clients are constantly calling her aunt. God returns, takes Natchez by the face, and insists that she is a beautiful, most beautiful 33-year-old woman he knows. She emphasizes that even if on the Hess, she once believed that her husband was finding her attractive when he told her. She was easy to communicate, cheerful, and just charming. At the time she walks without makeup, and he grunts that he does not want to go home because of it. His soup seems to think for a moment before answering. They are spent on cosmetics when she is barely enough for rent. Her husband, Micros, annoying, replies that even a man who earns $180,000 per month and whose wife often uses cosmetics accuses her of lazy and justifies. Nago not. She does not answer aloud, but inside she asks whether he understands how expensive cosmetics are now. It is frightened by the idea of spending even more than $1 million, even an extra 1,000 on itself. Minical, when he is scratching his pawns, insists that she should use makeup. She thinks whether love grows as well as people. Their relationship seems worn out, like an old wet basement, a love that has fallen faster than youth. Whether it's time to darken her beauty or an endless struggle for filling. Suddenly he notes that food is not so good. The history of the world. Her lips are trembling in doubt, whether it makes her feel less beautiful, whether she lost her glitter because he still loves him. The scene changes again. On weekends, he works in a meat bench, stands behind the motel, and in the morning opens a flower shop. She is surprised to be reminiscent of Hermione's schedule from Harry Potter. Wears an apron, because you need to open the store. Hujing sighs, noting that Nesu constantly thinks of work like they. Hajong suddenly asks Nesu if she knows about MBTI's personality types. Nesu shakes his head. Hajong is clearly struck and astonishment with surprise. Do you want to say that you don't even know about MBTI? What is the Nesu? Laughing, she notes that it seems that the Nez really lives only with work. From the time he became adult, she did not allow herself to relax, except once she got to the flu hospital at 24 years. At first, she was busy. He approached her with a guilty expression. She immediately asked how much this time, how much money he borrowed on her behalf. Instead of answering, he noted that she is not a good person. She was ready to forgive him. But nevertheless, she still has debts. Love is able to tolerate a lot. Debts. She did not feel particularly upset or depressed, just accepted it as a given. She believed that if it was hard to work hard, one day would be able to extinguish them, ready to take his order in the same way as the dry. Looking, she thinks that she is still young. So she welcomes the young man and is wondering if he came after the flowers. Lowering. Her eyes lit up, but instead of answering a young man, he returned to Nakes and, contacting her, said he wanted to make an order. Nakesu was absorbed by a wave of memories. Everything reminds her of him. She does not know what they were talking about, but she realizes that all this was a misunderstanding. She thinks what she does. Puzzled, as well as Ryan, her colleagues, about a sympathetic man who bought roses every day, suddenly was involved in her mind. At this moment, the moment came when it became clear that he was not a regular visitor. It was something special, almost strange. His gaze. When she came to the door, she suddenly stopped, feeling that the light was already burning inside. She wondered why it could be that way. He looked fascinated at her. When the SU wounded whether it was a familiar bouquet of roses, a pretty man, he rejoiced that she remembered it. Neesu. Well, removing the roses, it reflects as the world. There are two types of people. Those who find themselves in the spotlight as the main characters of novels or movies, and those who, and next to it she assumes, belongs to the first group, while she considers herself part of the second. Lifting. Handling a bouquet to a man, she notes that he, again with this bouquet, which he had previously given. It seems to her that he always takes the initiative, that she is annoying a little. Perhaps that is what a man who suddenly broke into her life was indifferent to everything except work, and her husband left made a deep impression on her. After his departure of her, Hajong is fascinated by how everything happened and asks if she noticed that he was nearby, but he wanted her to take order. It replies that he suspects that a man comes pretty because of her, because it only appears on the morning when she is at work and never talks to her boss. Surprisingly, Nesu confesses that she first paid attention to him. Shock. Pajan cannot believe that others have not noticed it. Nakesa has never paid attention to this man, although he came to buy flowers every day for several months. It is slightly surprised. She is interested in thinking about whether it is really so, remembering that she should prepare certain bouquets for him. Looking at the schedule, he notes that it is clear, given how busy he is, but still amazes like such a person as he could go unnoticed. After all, she still remembers the face of a pretty man she saw in the subway 10 years ago. In a smile, she hints that this man may be interested in Nakesa. Nakesa. He waves, asking her to stop grinding nonsense and get back to work. Kwojan assures that it's not nonsense. She asks if Nakesa did not notice how he looked at her before. Nakesa jokingly jokes whether the young man was taking some strange medicines to admire the older woman, adding that he looks 10 years younger than her. Praying rejects this cast, stating that Nakesis does not understand anything. Meeting older women has become a trend, and you never know for sure. He may be really interested, considering how attractive she is. It is, though not at all. Smoking quietly, sniffing roses, she sarcastically points out that if she is considered good, then all the real beautiful, apparently, have already died. Hachun, unmoved, insists on her own and asks, except people often do not tell her. Recently heard it from someone else. She indifferently rejects the compliment, noting that the flattery will change nothing. Hachjong, laughing, insists that she is still. It was nothing more than a good lie to cheer up a tired woman. Although the compliment was a little funny, it was still inconvenient, because at home it was not appreciated by its own man, but outsiders expressed praise. When Hachajia, Jong jokingly suggests that they could come to each other well. However, Nakes interrupts him, suddenly stating that she already has a man. This news leaves it. Jung's puppies are stunned, so she asks if that's really. Naggles nods, confirming his words. the reaction of the puppy Jong. He complains of fatigue and asks a glass of water. Meanwhile, she asks dissatisfied whether there is something else other than ordinary water. Adding a little ice, he notes that he is now going into the shower. After a shower, he lies next to Naka's, freeing up a place. A few years ago, one of his friends boasted of relationships with a younger woman, although her figure did not compare him. He did not pay attention to it because Nakesa usually wore free clothes. At this point, the exercise of the Ministry of Justice broke into, loudly thundering, "This body feels like good in his hands, though a long time has passed. It's been a long time since they wanted each other." However, he cannot hold on, but she is surprised why she does not respond to his touch. He asks if he sleeps, forcing the frowns to open his eyes and deny it. Annoyed, he asked her a question. She asks why she does not answer, because she is not a wooden doll. He grunts that he would like to be cheerful and expects the same answer from her. When the nail is quietly evoked in her emotion, she does not seem a woman. She eagerly strives for admiration and fun, but does not necessarily show tenderness to her husband. Explains that she is just a little tired. She appeals, asking if she does not seem that she works. He reminds that he also balances between several work. In the end, he sighs and tells her to forget about it. One should not expect another, turning away from her. Nakas falls asleep, and then begins. Its weekends begin at 6 a.m. Although the flower shop only opens at the 8th, it has to wake up earlier to cook a breakfast for a miner. Of course, since Minel does not like warmed food and refuses to breakfast without fresh soup, the Nesu prepares a new portion for him every morning, no matter how simple it may be. The one who cooks breakfast often leaves the house on an empty stomach, hurrying to work. Nahaisus. He must last until lunch because he already feels a hunger. When the client comes in, she asks him whether he came after the flowers. A young man, not confirming her guess. It takes a sou. She realizes that he is the same man, a do guy. She asks if it is a bouquet of roses, where about 10 flowers, which he politely confirms. Now, looking at, she notices that not only flowers attract attention, which notices that not only his face is impressive, but also the voice no less fascinating. A soft, low tone that politely answers, yes. For some reason, this sound still stays in her ears for a long time. She handed him a receipt and reported that several orders were still waiting for the execution, so it may take some time. Then she invited him. He lingered next to her, gently touching the check, forcing her to shudder unexpectedly. She recognizes him as a guy with a rose. He thinks with interest whether he knows the person who stands in front of him when he takes the car. Watching him as he drinks coffee and moves, she notes that even his gait resembles the course of the model and catches himself thinking. She laughs, thinking how high it can really be. He thinks of who his father can be in order to give birth to such a stunning man. As soon as Nakasupf, having completed the preparation of the bouquet, she called the young man, reporting that his order was ready. He accepted them, and he came out. However, the same, without delay, Tai went behind her. Nijis, who is freezing in place, noticed the left box with sandwiches. Nacy's are. That is a gift. He asked her to take it as a way to turn her back. She agreed, what Zisiso surprised. After they entered, Prajingo reassures her, convincing that this person undoubtedly has sympathy for her. She adds that he deliberately left her sandwich, and Nakiso is surprised that he also left coffee. If it's not a sign of attention, then what? She is very surprised. Not his opinion that she may look so pathetic, because when she cast her gaze, she was reflected in the window. She saw an exhausted woman without makeup, with spots on the skin all over her body. The actions of a man seem more regret and charity than true interest. She reflects on it and realizes that she has never sought such attention. Although she feels her stomach squeezed so loud that in his place she would not pass by. But she thinks, thank you, what if it is a real sign of his interest? What did you think about? Whether she should immediately put a point. She concludes that, thinking of what may never happen, she only makes her tasks easier. Pavajing then asks what she will do now. She reminds that she said she had a boy. Laughing, he caps up on the sew, asking whether she will give up roses or maybe change her boyfriend to a new fan. Nakasug takes a sip of drink. She explains that she has no boyfriend. She has a man, Guajong, Surprised by such information, she notes that when Nasu talked about the boy, she meant the man, not the boyfriend. She confessed that she did not know that Naksu was married. He remembered how her husband always insisted on not to advertise the fact of division of debt and call him a husband only at home. He wondered why she always shares their affairs, thinking that this is not what you should sway, to live together after divorce. And the noise that interferes only adds irritation. However, she assures Haijun that he is her husband and offers to complete the topic, causing another apology. The scene is transferred to Mitchell, to which the girl extends a cup of coffee, advising to drink it during work. Mitchell looks sorry, but without complete information about the context or plot, I cannot provide the appropriate translation. Please send a complete fragment of the text to improve. Sorry, but I can't provide the appropriate translation. Please send a complete fragment of the text to improve. The news states that the manner of communication of older people is different, but they recognize that Ari has a great charm and that youth is great. It is noted that ARI shows a great interest in the newcomer. Her look changes when she looks at him. They recall how they tried to reduce her with someone earlier, but she denied sharply, claiming that she was not interesting to her. Another employee. To the house where Mintul looks TV. Nagai. She annoys him when he tries to rest. Nesu insists that he does not grumble at all, but simply explains his point of view. That, as soon as they get their salary, they will be able to pay off the debt faster and marry again. Meinachel notes sarcastically that she only speaks of repeated marriage and doubts whether she really believes that he will agree as if the debt is paid. He asks how she can live without him and warns her not to press on him. He adds that when a woman gets a man, he will certainly run away. Then he raises the question. He approaches Nakes, remembering the need for pocket money. Hugging her from behind, she says she wants to buy perfumes. I am the only one in the office who smells of pressure like an old grandfather. He asks how much he needs, and Minkle confesses, about 200,000 KOW. He insists that, at his age, he should at least choose from the department store, noting that he will not buy the cheap products that children usually use. Lowering his shoulders, he remembers that he has a lot of money. He tells her that if she does not want to give him money, then let him forget about it. NEESUIT. Despite their savings, they remain in losses. She thinks whether you should take more work. She considers the opportunity. She is already working in motels on weekends from noon to the evening. If she takes a night shift in the store, their graphics will not intervene. She remains to reduce time to sleep, she thinks, taking a night shift in the store. She gets a cash envelope, remembering that Meinchel said that cologne was costing about 200,000. She is embarrassed that the young man heard this conversation. For unclear reasons, it is difficult for her to meet with him. But she won. Note to buy cologne later for delayed money. For her feelings as if they were presented to her. Data pieces by filling the rest of the time with work, for the sake of their happy, goes to two friends who in irony ask each other why one of them suddenly invited to dinner today. They joke that they can't get down that he actually first suggested to buy dinner by hinting at the rose. This is the one who usually does not go to cheap restaurants. Dongguk, stay. He calls two friends asking if they are ready to go. Tai replies that he also called someone too. They are preparing to go, and Donwook notices that she has been more confident lately and looks happier. Scene shows that if the wife is smart and loving, she will naturally earn money and sacrifice for the family. Who thought of the words of Mintel? They used to be very gentle at once, and it was like that. She thought. She wondered whether she was not wise enough or not tender enough, suspecting that perhaps it was it that she had destroyed their relationship, trying to avoid. They stood in front of her, and recognizing him, she realized that he was a guy Rose. Stay walks past with his friends when the waitress announces a free table for 4. The girl confirms. The waitress announces a table for 4, and the girl confirms that they are in the same amount. Talking about how a Rose guy seems to be fond of her, she has hinted at his curiosity. However, she is convinced that she does not feel any interest in him. She did not even approach this issue. The girl next to him is probably his girlfriend because they look really great. It assumes with younger people. She never knows what they can talk about and tries to come together with thoughts. The girl then calls. Belm Tae shouts the name, asking what he looks at, because you can see that she has been looking for a long time. Dronbung. Hedge notes that it is similar to illness. Then he exclaims to the boom, asking why he looks so carefully at the woman and whether they are familiar. The boom smiles. The action is transferred to the house where she is engaged in household chores and notices a torn t-shirt. She thinks. Lying, he asks why he does not rest, and she replies that he sews. Minachil, interested, asks what she sews and advises how best to do it. He takes the fabric and calls it pathetic, asks if she is really serious. I just try to explain to her that she is not a good girl. Why, despite all efforts, does she continue to mention humiliating and shameful moments? Now, Sue asks Mintla to return the fabric. Mintel sighs and denies, saying something fuzzy. He always says things that end up depressed. He helps her get up and reminds her that night person is for her, to which Nakesu quietly agrees. Winter, H. Today, when Naikasa is packaging, the weather forecast warns of possible rain in the afternoon, which will last until late at night. It is likely that the rain will last until the evening, so she decided to take an umbrella. She asks herself what she does. After examining them, she noticed that one was looking intact, while the other is shabby. They sit next to the Mintel. He asks whether instant coffee has ended, what Ari asks where the new packaging. Mintel recalls that somehow saw her there while Ari is trying. Ari is very frightened, almost panic, holding tightly for Mintla. He was moved by such a reaction and he proposes to catch an insect, asking where she is. However, when looking around, he finds nothing. Meanwhile, Ari insists that she was exactly there. The lesser thinks. Never fearing insects, Nisu finds something refreshing in Ari. It almost makes the arrival to work justified. The scene changes. Nisu notes that someone is late today. Nisu announced his arrival. Nisu. Feeling inconvenience, she quickly decides to engage in flowers in the backyard, forcing her girlfriend to ask about a sudden departure. Because outside, remain on this channel. Nakesu goes to the counter, leaving room, as he did not even look back before he made a decision. The rain pours like a bucket. Nagi dry. Recalling the forecast for heavy rain, he notes that he is in fact pouring out of a bucket now, and he hopes that Minachol has not forgotten an umbrella. It opens. How it cracks and breaks down. She remembers. In the morning it seemed like everything, but now everything was completely broken. Although the senior store is nearby, it is not necessary to get through the rain. The weather does not promise rapid change because the rain will last until the night, so she will not be able to wait endlessly here. Therefore, as the Pavari, and most without unnecessary noise, judge people, even when it comes to a small amount of money, Brella could avoid this situation if she had not postponed everything for later and did not acquire a new one in advance. She thinks about possible actions, and Nakesus doubts whether it is so. He approached Nakes, insisting on the truth of his words, asking him to believe him. She understands that if Mitchell is calling now, he will probably be annoyed because he has been tired lately because of adaptation to a new job. Decides to wait a little more. And just then, to the meeting. Friends, next time. Suddenly, an umbrella appears over his head. It's Biomta. He asks where she goes, but she insists that everything will be fine, explaining that her home is a little far, so it is better for him to go forward. However, Biomti continues to note that the rain should go to dawn and proposes to share an umbrella. Hearing this, the characters do not hold the blow. She felt as if the sky was mocking to her for such a self. Made mistake. The whole situation made it impossible to avoid this man. She was convinced. Nahu realized that they were heading home. Contrary to expectations, the man did not say a word. However, because of heavy rain, they were not as embarrassed as they imagined. His gait was extremely slow for such tall. Even Manel, too, from Nature High, always fell behind when they were walking together. It may have already been a habit that rooted in it when he once worried about someone. For example, about the jacket. In the end, he noted that his girl may not like the question, having expressed anxiety what will happen if she learns that he shared an umbrella with a stranger. Bilty only asked calmly who said he had a girl. Promenade. I would not give up the question of the woman he was seen in a restaurant with barbecue. He explained that she was not his girlfriend, but just a girlfriend. Nihis replied that yes, although these words seemed strange to her, as if she could not fully comprehend the situation. Beimati quickly pulled the crack to the side to keep her from the splashes of water. Asked, he explained that the car pulled up too quickly and he was worried that it could be injured. Nahasa reassured him, saying that she was all right with her, though she was still experiencing the fear of her. However, emphasizing his high height, she noted how he successfully protected her from splashes. Now that she noticed that the other side of his cloak was completely soaked, while her clothes remained almost dry, she wondered if he was to ask if he was interested in her. Nakas asked why he was so good to her. He smiled and confessed that she guessed his intentions. Nakas shuddered from these words, but he clarified that he just wanted to know her better. Nakesu waved, but Baim asked why. She noted that he was young and popular with women and asked why he'd a care for his older woman. Amte's words about the desire to know her echo in her thoughts. Their deep timbre resembled the sound of rain under an umbrella. When answering, he asked why the younger age and popularity should interfere with a good relationship with someone older. Nasa confidently stated that it was impossible and asked him to stop. They have already arrived. Standing on the threshold of his home, thanked him for a beautifully spent day to conquer. He asked if they would continue to be strangers for each other. Watching him depart, Na Shuft thought he would be more urgent, but he was more flexible in his decisions. Noisu became interested in her, and he did not understand why. It may be because of his young age and maybe just out of curiosity. Going to her home, she realized that Mingle had forgotten an umbrella. Remembering the words spoken in her shop, she thought that someone should pick up an umbrella near the company, and Minachel would probably be grateful. The scene changed when Nakesa, holding an umbrella, arrived at the office. Standing outside, she called him, but in response, silence. Their plans seemed to break. He probably did not see a message that she would take it because he had a phone. She regretted that she spent time on the road without confirming or specific arrangements, and decided to return home. Watching them, Nakesa looked intently, which prompted Odd's girl to ask Minjul about this woman. Minjul tried to look at a casual, asking Nakes what had happened and whether she came to pick him up, despite heavy rain. In order to settle the situation, Minachil explained that it was just a family business that prompted Ori to apologize. Whispering quietly, he said that Nakesa was a close friend, almost like a relative. He hoped that Ori would go without unnecessary questions. Saying goodbye, Mitchell said R.A. that he used an umbrella. She nodded and went away. Gasso still worried the scene, so she asked the person of that girl, remembering the woman she saw earlier. Mitchell explained that it was Ari, a girl with whom he works in the same company. In modern society, collegial, friendly, and other relationships between men and women are permissible. Calling the Nessa not to disgrace himself, Minsa left her stand still, deeply thought. The next day, both sisters were tired. They complained that it was not even a seasonal peak, and wholesale orders were too much, so buyers should pay extra for such requirements. He only wished a good day without extra customers, except those who came in the rows. But her face always gave them confidence and strength. Heisu thought it was incredible that the pink guy really came, and even today he looked as attractive. Akes, smiling, said she would go to rest, leaving it and ordering on behalf of Nakes, like Nakasa. However, Nakes wondered what order he should make. After that, 2 weeks passed. Mitchell often returned home late, even on weekends, because he was very busy, until she told the seller of roses that they would never get acquainted. Deep feeling. She fell asleep last night, not even noticing how Mintel entered, and since then she never received any news from him. Nakesu suggested taking care of the order of 4 portions of pork belly. He expressed the opinion that arrival here testifies to improving his condition after divorce. The chief agreed, rejoicing that he no longer hears the annoying thread of his ex-wife. He did not feel the inconvenience sitting at the young employee at work, remembering how the company continues to grow. I decided that as soon as the business is getting better, they would be able to enjoy the second youth. Head, IT dreamed that it would be great to start a new life with someone like her. When the employee offered to pour a drink, the boss refused. The same. Employees reminded him that it was still a regular restaurant, but boss, infuse not be hasty. The boss murmured about that damn bee that pursues Nakesa, recognizing him with a future president of the technology shop. The owner of the store, bowing, pleaded guilty, apologized for his employees, and offered additional meat as compensation. However, the buyer gave up this offer, ordering another. It will not be easy. He noted for himself that she behaves too proudly for a person who works in such a place. He believed that her passion should be quenched. Show, preventing their return. Without any delay. Without hesitation, Nakes dropped on his knees, apologizing and mercy. Stop tried to refuse her, but Navisa insisted that she was guilty, that the client was upset. She pleaded for forgiveness. He heard enough to understand that this man is really terrible. No, how so? She simply replied that dinner with colleagues is now a rare phenomenon. and the loss of clients such as they will have a negative impact on their business. She, Seye, confidently assured him that everything was fine with her, and it was sincere. In her youth, she worked at various works, experiencing sleepless nights filled with sadness. Her heart hardened and became insensitive to pain. The store owner asked Nias if she planned to go home by offering. She refused, explaining that she got a job and a day off. What surprised the owner? He joked when she had time and asked if her body was made of metal. Nias reassured him, they say, works only on the weekend, so it is real. The owner noted that she is not just an ordinary person. The shop owner hesitated before asking whether she has big debts. The nail took a deep breath, remembering the past, and with a slight smile answered the barefoot. Minachel was desperately apologizing, begging her to pay the debt, promising that as soon as he was repaid, they would marry and heal happily. When the unpleasant client swaying from the drunk came out of the room, he muttered, how nice it was to see her on her knees. If he was talking hard, she would rather fulfill his request, but it didn't happen. He wondered if she knew who he was. I am convinced that such a beautiful girl as she cannot go unnoticed. He believed that first it was necessary to break her spirit, and only then she would respect him. And now we can talk with Nakas alone. Only evil can treat the baby so. A troubled girl. At that moment, Beyoncé struck him with his leg, and he fell, angry, asking who he was and whether he intended to die. Significantly, he jumped his head gently. Shocked by pain, he froze, while Beyoncé demanded that he respond to the blow. Cursing, the man exclaimed that the boom does not even know how to respect the elders. He boasted of his boxing feats, which he said in 3 days. The blow flew, but the boom barely shuddered and just smiled. Umte just replied that if he does not know, then it was his opportunity to find out. After that, he knocked him down with a series of blows. At this time, she opens the door and sees the man who drinks. Despite her, he orders her to prepare and impose makeup, complaining about, they moved to the store where it worked. There was a lot of work, especially at night, but it was easier to work alone. When there was almost no visitors in the cafe, she leaned on the rack. She began to take a nap. But suddenly she heard the door opened and looked. She froze from surprise. It was a rosy guy. Seeing him, she looked at him, thinking whether they really live in one area. They were already met in a flower shop, a restaurant, and now in here. Since she was the only worker, there was none. Although they had to remain strangers, Nakis decided to treat him as a regular client. But, as she noted, she did not consider herself a good person. Returning to him, she noticed a bandage on his face. She returned to him and froze with surprise, asking herself what happened to his face. Then, with a slight smile, she asked him what he planned to do next. She thought she would not go. If you only apply a dressing without the use of medication, the wound will only get worse. If there is no reaction on his part, he is just a dishonest guy. The urine thought for a minute. She thought if he believed she was interfering. Indeed, sudden intervention on her part looked a bit bold, but just light and casual tone. She asked, and if he was still young, he decided to just let go. Follow her. Byam realized that it was a casual style of speech, which looked quite unusual for him as a representative of Bayon. Negosha confessed that he did not know how to use it, but he was advised to be smarter. Having paused, but she asked her to give it to her. When she pulled the object, Bumat tried to stop it, but he failed. He said he would hold on, even if he hurts, and that it is only temporary. He smiled slightly. She asked if she was very painful, but BMTA denied, they say, it was just a little tickling. Interested? Nakaz wondered BMTA, and he stated that he was an adult. His answer seemed strange to her, which raised even more questions on her part. She thought why. When she wondered what happened to his face, he assured her that everything was fine. It was not his fault. It was just because he was poor. Now he is. Her heart squeezed. Another poor life, similar to her own. In these moments, she remembered herself in her youth, unable to avoid violence and poverty. Balin Tai asked if she had a weak heart. Nesu confirmed this by remembering that love. She agreed, noting that they should get to know each other better. He agreed, smiled, and praised God. When now asked, in the house, Adi, sitting, they knew that it was a cocktail of soy and beer for 5 people, and Ari, having felt dizziness, realized that she had already drank so much soya that her face had changed color. She was on her. The third circle began through the mental. and she wondered why everyone was excited. Stretching a glass to Ari, she took her glass, trying, "Impress her." He told her to do it, that it's just beer. Ari felt the fascinated moment as if it had pleased her. Employees. He is a weirdo. They laughed, asking him about the tastes in women. They asked about the ideal and vice versa. The type of person he does not like. Stretch pants for comfort can be a real repulsive factor. The staff laughed. One of them was a girl. They noted that Meinchel sometimes said like a married man, though he was alone. They were surprised why the description of the one he did not love was so detailed. Usually, celebrities gave vague answers about their ideal, and when they had a partner, they became specific. Mingle seems to be a very good person. Minichel was a little like them. Even if he denied it, perhaps at heart he sought universal love. She asked his name. Na Seuss noticed what an unusual name in him, but guessed that it was because Bae Om Tae wished her good luck that perhaps she offered to call her a taxi if she decides to return home on her own. Ari, not. The guys. And she really liked it. Turned in her thoughts, she wondered what to do. Commenting on her thoughtfully. Commenting on her. Why was it so annoying? She only had to say that she knew nothing. She asked him to do the same as other men. She insisted. Drink another glass. Minchel, without. Minekal had fun with Auda, and in the meantime, it seemed to be a bad way. It was similar to the sticky humidity of the summer night. Thick and sweet. She choked her, clinging to the resin on a hot asphalt. It seemed like life. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. The other hand enjoyed every moment with Ari. When Nasu went on the road, she thought about how hard it was not to sleep all night and how much she needed a rest. The next morning, waking up, Minichel called Nakesa. He explained that he had been staying at a corporate party, so he decided to spend the night in the nearest bath complex. Before that, he added that he was not a child and asked if she was in fact going to file a disappearance because he did not spend the night at home twice. If she was worried that he was not there so she could do up. Noticing that Arya was approaching, Mitchell quickly completed the conversation, explaining that he had to go, which plunged into her thoughts. The question was, does Mitchell cause the problem again? Anxiety. She came in habit, but was even more shocked by his indifference. Looked like a fool. She did not even realize that it was not just nothing for her, and her heart was slowly fading and dying of sadness. I am a tag, read it, call it. Usually, Byumtae did not even remember the names, but here he greeted him. He was known for not touched quiet children, although they are usually indifferent to others. Suddenly, Beyonce asked for a help in G. When Baemtaig said again with G, he returned to look at him. Baemtaig pointed out that they were classmates in the second year, and G confirmed it, wondering how he was able to remember him at all. Remembering how a desk of Byumtae was always surrounded by other students, he thought whether Byumtae was once part of their company, which caused suspicion in Jehu, who wondered whether it was not a new trick. When Jehu asked what's the matter, Beyonce only asked, for your leg size. Gee, hey. Surprised replied that his feet are large enough for his height, so he bears size. One day she found the perfect couple and offered to exchange shoes. While G wore already worn shoes that was almost worth nothing. When Bumat asked if this means the refusal, the Jihu hesitated before agreeing, not believing that you could just exchange such expensive shoes. It was like a bullying, but Nelumat assured him that everything was fine and still thanked him for his courtesy. Jihu just shrugged, saying that gratitude was not needed, though he could not get rid of the feeling that he watched Bae and Tae. And you? He could not get rid of the idea that maybe girls were right. Bomti really seemed like a good guy, but he felt some kind of loneliness and alienation. He went to rest outside near the store, gradually sinking into sleep. Suddenly, the girl came and took one of his headphones. Biom carelessly stated that it was a good song, which the she murmured that he was just an uneducated fool. Then he pointed to his shoes, asking what was wrong with them. It was clear that he was confused. Easy noted that they did not look like what he usually wears, and asked when he started using such shoes. He called him crazy, but don't look at his friends. We walked past when one of them paid attention. Next to Byum Pius stood a jealous friend of Donwook, wondering why people like Byumta so much. Donwook was contemptuously noted that it was obvious, and with a mockery he said how quickly the hedges left Donwook behind. It became angry with Donwook. and he ordered him to be silent because he looked closely at the hedge, which did not look away from him. The jealousy was burning inside the dongwook when he was quietly moving. The plot was moved to a store where Nakesa suddenly apologized. A embarrassed Narisu asked what happened and then sighed, explaining that she seems to be wrong, believing that a guy with roses is interested in her because now he buys flowers for someone else. In the end, even envied Bamte, Nanhaya looked happy, dreaming of him. She said that his voice is so pleasant that she could not wait when he would visit again. Then Bamte entered the store. Bamte went to Nakes and informed that he had come to buy flowers. Stroke, Nakes unexpectedly realized how close the Bamte came close to him. She asked what he wanted, but Bamte smiled, answering that she already knew his order. Now they know each other well. Nahi. Jesus stood up, saying that it would prepare a bouquet of roses and asked him to wait. When she came out of flowers, Bainta followed her, looking around before asking if there are any special offers in the store. Naka dry, watching this scene, frozen at surprise, trying to understand what is happening between them. Bamtek was neglected and at ease asked what Braza would do later. She warned him that if he continues to insist, he would certainly get caught up. In the soul, Baimta could not hold back a smile, almost wanting to get that hug, explaining that he should return to work and does not have time to spend it with Baimta. Baim draws information that he already knew, recalling that they met in a meat restaurant recently. Nakesa agreed, remembering that it was true. Omate noticed that they barely got acquainted because she was always busy. Nakes just replied that adults were always like that. The left nail became a little strange when she noticed how exhausted he was. This is just because she lived with Mindchul 13 years old, always picking up clothes and even underwear for him. Nakesa, not noticing this earlier, drew attention to how the Beomte shoes were worn. She thought he looked good enough to wear old shoes, but she thought why he spends money on flowers, not something more practical, such as new shoes. She was curious, so she asked him how he could buy flowers every day, hinting that money could be spent more rational. Smiling, Omede answered her. There was no rule that the poor is forbidden to buy. Nakavs was surprised, because his words were revealed for her, as if a bright smear against the backdrop of a dim world. She suddenly felt shame for her limited. She always arranged banquets for others, but she never thought about giving something beautiful to herself. She quietly agreed with the beep and thanked him for having spent her. Beomate. He smiled and suggested that they see themselves more often, stretching her flowers. At this point, one of the employees turned to Mineral, asking how he was going with Ari. Hearing their conversation, Ari listened quietly, standing in the corner. Employee. The employee noted that he would be jealous because at first Ari seemed to be arrogant, but proved to be accessible in communication. Added that young women often, even surprised whether Mintiel had already gone so far in his relationship with her that it annoyed it. Mintiel interrupted quickly. He asked sarcastically why the man was laughing constantly, called him brazen, and ordered him to be silent. He left, leaving the deputy manager of the Lonely in the Lane, where he boiled from rage, quietly leaning under his nose. It was at that moment that Ari ran to Mitchell and hugged him firmly. She confessed that she hesitated at first because she feared that everything was going too fast, especially after she heard that men often lose interest when relationships become intimate. But with the onset of the night, the atmosphere became cooler. That night, working at the hotel, Nahi SU met the client who asked the room. CSS stood firmly on its own, stating that she could not fulfill such requirements. He stretched her card and asked her to book all the rest of the vacancies. Surprised, Anyu asked if he really refers to all the rooms because the client with anger came out, complaining that only arrogant people work in business. He muttered his nose, asking for help. They followed him without unnecessary noise. She gladly informed the Enes that things were going to lift and suggested that she go home earlier. Even dark streets, usually fierce and harsh at night, seemed unexpectedly cozy. I realized that this rare moment of rest was only a lull before the storm. And Asif felt surprisingly happy, realizing that youth had just a fascinating freshness. Beyonce noted that the girl ignores his calls, which was the reason for mockery from Dongguk. Did he know about this situation? Nakesu warned that he was hot, like the taste, and the Mintel replied that everything was well. Mitchell spoke not as usual, and it was not because of a sense of guilt that he spent the last few days with another woman. It seemed as if her life would remain unchanged forever. He wondered if such dynamics could really strengthen the relationship of the couple. Nakesa returned him to reality. asking him or something happened, but the minstrel denied, expressing gratitude for the money she gave him to buy perfume. When Nakesa asked if he had purchased them, Mitchell confessed that he had not bought them yet. He explained that he was busy and, seeing how hard she worked to make this money, did not dare to spend them. Nakesu assured him that everything was fine and he could buy it. Mikal thought that Nakes, as always, was a kind, simple, and weird person who was always suitable. Nakesa, surprised, asked if he had gone crazy, to which Minako denied, asking whether he looks like a beast that would be angry because of such. After that, he just ordered her to go to work. Since he still needed to buy perfumes, he wondered if it was better to leave the nave. The scene moved to a moment when the Nez was walking, looking at the price tag on the clothes and delving into her thoughts. Someone approached her with the question of what she was looking at, but thought about it without saying. It stunned Nakesa, and she thought that the bag could be so expensive. For a long time, Manel wrote Ari with a proposal to meet later. Without hesitation, he burned them to the ashes. Akes noted that he had changed a little that day, which Beyoncé just agreed. During the walk by the lane, Nakesa noted that she only had a little time, which prompted Baum and asked if she was going to work again. He assured her that everything was fine and suggested that you spend it in the store. Nakes wondered if she mentioned the store at all, but Baumta continued, noting how dark and dangerous he became Elaine at night. Nakesa, unmoved, reminded him that she was grown up and was not easy to scare her. Moving further lane, Beyonce suddenly noticed. Nakesi asked what happened, to which Baumte replied that she seems to have a mosquito bite on top. Nakesa noted that winter is now and it could not be painful. However, Nakesa insisted that there were no insects in winter. As you can see, recalling Mitchell's bite, she was shaken and the pain was still responding in the body. She quickly justified, saying that it was probably a bite of an insect. Haseo thought for a moment before letting it be done. He reflected what kind of this act was and how inconvenient it would be if someone saw it. So I decided to just leave the patch. Sticking the patch, Baimta asked why she did not answer him for so long. Nayaz explained that she had kept his number. Baimta said that he did not ask about keeping the number, but about the answer. Nayaz was not wildered, not knowing what to answer. The ointment laughed easily, saying that he would miss if she did not answer. She did not know how to respond and even doubted whether this message needed. But after recalling his sweet message, Niasu realized that she first received such touching words from someone. She shrugged and added that it was probably not very fun to be friends with a woman older than herself. For Nihasu, these relationships with a young friend meant more. They helped her stay on Earth. Vienti assured her that the apology was not needed. He turned to her because he really wanted it, not because he was angry as a small child. The next day, the scene changed. Nesu felt attractive to someone. She turned to the store owner with a question about the price indicated at 100,000. The only one. She thought about whether to take a photo and send it, hesitating whether it was not a too small step but a kind of proof. After watching the previous messages of Byum-tie, she still decided to send a photo. He asked in Eri if she wanted to visit him, but quickly changed his mind and offered to go to her. Noticing Nakes in the room, he suddenly completed the conversation and said, he approached her asking why she was home at this time. Now, she stopped for a short time to ask if he had already finished work. Mantle denied, claiming that he had to get back to work, and he only dresses in comfortable clothes. Going to the bedroom, he asked where his pants were usually stored. She offered help in search, but Mantle refused, saying that he would handle herself. She said it was just a flower, something extra in their position. However, for some reason, Minachel felt heat in his chest. Looking at Nagisu, fate, dry, and bourbon, symbols of his youthful poverty, he could not understand why her simple gesture, a flower brought home. He awakened his emotions. He was going to spend the night with another woman, but suddenly saw her there. She was as inconspicuous and unceremonious as always, but it made his thoughts turn around her. Without warning, he suddenly, Akes tried to deny, claiming that it was dangerous without the necessary precautions. Hearing this, the mood of the Mintla changed, and he went to aggression. Grabbing her throat, he said coldly that she would not get pregnant. While the reality is sowing snow, meanwhile, the action was transferred to Bumt, who smiled with a photo of a flower. One of them noted that Dongvuk was also seen for lunch with Beomtai here, which looks like a strange coincidence. But Beomtai just smiled mysteriously, asking himself, "Finished?" For each appearance, there are many inevitable coincidences that are intertwined to form a single consciousness. He suggests that perhaps there is very little time. The end of this story has been identified from the beginning. She was destined to be short, and finds traces of lipstick on the shirt. She looks at Nakez, which is worried about the trace from the lipstick as soon as it sees it. Meanwhile, Nakez asks if she was not injured, but replies that everything is fine. Although it was clearly a note from another woman and she did not use cosmetics, it seemed that it was not so important. Apparently, there were insurmountable circumstances or a funny case, but now she doubted where their relationship was. Someone may not notice and accidentally collided with Minakol. It was a small little thing because nothing serious happened. However, the gaze of his threatening words about not worrying, forcing her heart to tremble. Maybe it was so. The client was indignant at the girlfriend, accusing her of betrayal. She changed her vision. The girlfriend, from which she warned from the very beginning, now strikes her. She asked that for nonsense about the inability to settle in life only because of the lack of children. They continued to argue about whether their fault is that she had no children, and thought how to be sure that the problem was not in a man. She exploded with emotions and went, thinking about how earlier the work helped her dive into business and quickly forget about the sad moments. She tried to come together, imagining a vivid future for herself and Mineral. However, she was not so confident now. Beyonce comes to a bike note, not the one who is upset. It seems ironic. The more you try to let go, the more it enters a 24-hour store thinking how to relieve its anxiety. It feels awkward. The question is why this person chooses nothing, but only thoughtlessly looks at himself. Then she shows her a mouse phone screen. Do you want you to be shed? Be honest. Tom removes the helmet, and Naki Suze is interested in his appointment. Tom replies that he had just returned from work. Nahisu asks if he really works. Concerned, Nahi-su advises him to be careful, saying that it is easy to suffer in such work. Bioma asks that jokingly if she worries for him. In the end, he asks why he is here at all. Bioma confesses that it is hungry. Then Hesu asks in surprise if he is not. She criticizes the situation, asking what a business that leaves a child hungry, and calls it a real ridicule. He says that he has no choice, moving for the NAB and emphasizing the importance of the situation. If you want to see the next episode, subscribe to our channel. Nice to see you again. Thank you. Goodbye. To feel difficulty. After all, he cannot afford a break at work, leaving someone hungry. Knox suggests that he stop standing out of business and choosing something for food, offering to buy him at least a lunchbox or a cup of paw, seeing an unusual tattoo on his wrist. Sums Naga asks what it is. Beatty hastily covered the tattoo, thinking about whether she has disliked for such things. Recalling how he got this tattoo, Beatty hesitated for a moment. Now, Sui no Tung, looking at his paws, wondered if he did it himself. She asked it was difficult. Her voice tried to stay calm, but a slight tremor at the end gave her true feelings. Her eyes, which were almost filled with tears, forced him to solidify in place. He realized that he likes when she looks at him. Her facial expression, as if she was about to cry, moved him. Reconnecting her, Tai assured that it was an accident, not what she thought. He also added that she should not worry, but because it was an old scar, she decided not to focus on it. Instead, she suggested trying another brand by handing it another pack. When he asked the reason, she explained that it was 300 kilovolts more expensive and in, back to the screen. She seemed immersed in her thoughts, though she was already tired because of. She doubted whether it was because she could forget about the longing that hung over her all day through the work of Mintel. Fighting thoughts about this story, and to understand that Belm Tai in many aspects was a strange man. It was covered with scars and wounds. His behavior was peculiar. The tastes were unusual. And in everything else, he really seemed bizarre. Then the views focused on the Ministry of Education. Ari shouted him. Without any hesitation, she stated that she wanted to marry him, which surprised him. He, a little entertained, acknowledged that she was not completely wrong. However, he noted that although he always had this approach to younger girls, is it not undesirable to spend the best years on trying to fit into someone's life and get married early? Suggested to enjoy youth instead of thinking about marriage. His work? At first glance, she looked like a well-educated young lady. Her hair was soft and smooth, and unlike Naza, it was always smelled of cosmetics or perfume, which was very nice. Soon, Ari wondered if he thought about marriage. Menhen replied that he would have lied if he said he didn't think about it. Interested, she asked what he sees his life in the event of a marriage. he answered. She asked with interest if he wanted to become a father. Mindel confirmed that he once thought that he immediately raised her question, why he used the past tense. Smiling, he remembered how Nakes once remembered that because of poor health, it would be difficult for her to have children. This sometimes caused him annoyance, but he understood deeply in his soul that even if it were not for the state of Naza, having a baby would be a luxury for them. Minichil said Ari that it is not easy to raise a child in the modern world, which is why he has abandoned the idea. Feeling a wave of compassion, Ari again embraced him, assuring not to give up, believing that his dream would come true one day. Then his thoughts returned to Bianti again when he remembered how someone asked why his wrist looked so strange. One of the comrades noted that it is reminiscent of a tattoo that looks like a Buddhist, saying that he was able to give a smile to Brown. He wondered how white scars could be seen under black tattoos before seeing the ink. Yes, that Nekesu was achieved. He wondered how much she was. Even effortlessly on her part, he already felt on the verge. Seeing the expression of her face, he asked if she really believed that everything is reduced to mutual attraction between men and women. Nakes tried to deny it, but the mineral reassured her, hinted that it may be due to the fact that she had few friends or acquaintances. He tried to delay the moment of completing a failed relationship. It seemed that everything would not be gone. He took a deep breath, reminding himself that the cause of all suffering is attachment. He already instinctively felt the approach of suffering and was no way to avoid this. The attachment was already deeply rooted, and there is only suffering. Meanwhile, Naki was stepping forward. She suddenly noticed a familiar face from the past. When he approached her, he said, suddenly tensed, his body trembled when he noticed the shadow near the lane. It was covered by fear. The person suddenly rushed to flee. Nahai-su was surprised. She asked herself what could make them react so. Later, returning home, SU found that Mitchell was already sleeping. She thought whether the work was so difficult because it usually did not lie so early. Considering how busy it was lately and how rarely he was at home, his fatigue was clear. Sitting quietly, she decided that she should also rest, as soon as she was going to comfortably whistle, as he rang the phone in Minsol. The name of Ari was shown on the screen, and she had a question she had long since he wanted to ask, but never dreamed of. She froze from shock, not knowing whether to accept the call or to take the risk of answering it. There was a burning feeling in the breast. The next day, a long time considering a long time, he wondered, why was the one who was so young and beautiful had this youth and beauty? What is the cause of his surprisingly young and attractive appearance? She apologized for a call late in the evening, thinking about the relationship with the Minicle. Were they really only familiar? Even if their relationship had changed, she wanted to believe that the remnants of heat would remain where she once raged a passion. She was afraid that she would not be able to cope with the answers, and while hesitated, the call broke off. She tried to convince herself that it was probably a working call, but the thoughts of him did not leave her. Meanwhile, in the present, Hajong returned to hell to reality, addressing her. She showed a photo card and asked if she considered this girl a beautiful girl. Her story is just beginning. She soon received a photo from a wedding where one of her loved ones married happily. It moved her so much that she barely held back the trembling. She dreamed that he would also have a chance to wear a wedding dress. She told that she also got married. It was said that preparing for the wedding, including the search for dresses, costumes, and makeup, can be an extremely fussy business. Where did the Natcha go in search of her heart? He suggested that Nakes would look great in any outfit, and that her husband was probably delighted. Moving into the past where Nakesa filled and made shape, he was surprised how the form was filled so quickly, because he thought it would be more difficult. Minichel confessed that marriage was different from his ideas, whether they should go for lunch that day. The Nail refused, saying that it is not necessary, because they have already spent a lot in search of the house and now need to save a little. A few minutes. At the back, he approached Nakasu, trying to cheer her up, and jokingly called her a man who spoils his mood. He winked with her, noting that he had a great desire to eat meat and suggested that he go away. In the end, the Sioux has agreed by proposing they enjoy the meat. In his silence, strength is felt. She dreams of hugging these shoulders, which with such maturity carry the burden of world suffering. I will mention this next year. If he knew that everything would happen, perhaps that day it was worth taking a few more strokes. Suddenly, or next year, when everything is better, they could marry. She promised him that she would wear a beautiful dress, and they would buy a very expensive model with a large diamond. He asked where to go to the honeymoon, assuming that outstanding places have their reasons to be so popular. We decided to go to Hawaii, which caused a smile on the face of Nakesa. After meeting in Hawaii, she decided to assure them that they should go to Hong Kong. This caused a blush from embarrassment. She laughed with him quietly. The promise of that day remained unfulfilled, and now that she officially became a stranger to Mitchell, she believed that they just needed to keep their feelings unwavering. She prayed so that he did not move too far from the day, more shining and bright than the diamonds they could not have. Meanwhile, Beomte thought why he sent so many messages to Nikezia and did not receive any answer. Seeing a mark on his neck, he thought that she still had feelings for him, and now he did not even read his messages. Then she demanded that she call the girls for him. Staying professional, Naka stressed that she needed his credit card to pay. Not such requests. The confused man passed the card, murmuring about ordering a room. He wondered what he should do in this situation. Before Bayon, Tae was lit. They were offered to light him with a smile. Tate looked at him and apologized, saying that he did not need a fire. Then removed a lollipop from his mouth. Forcing. The guard laughed. Jay quietly squeezed himself under his nose and apologized to Boom Tim, noting that he only wanted to light a fire for him. He confessed that it was for him, like a fantasy, like a moment from a movie in the style of Nar or Ekwa. Boom. Byum-tae, with a smile, allowed him to light up, surprising the guard. Jay did not expect to be a knight to meet him in this imagination. Tae then stated that he did not recognize him, pushing for actions. The guard should be introduced as a new employee. The officer wondered if he ever had to bury a person. Surprised by Jay, remembering the words of Beyonce that he could soon need to bury someone, sincerely confessed that he was not warned about it. However, if he copes with the consequences and gets proper compensation, he will be able to overcome the situation. But Bayant stretched his lighter, calling not to worry and relax, saying he just joked. As soon as Bayamte went away, leaving Jay in surprise, Jay asked his companion if it was really a joke, noting that from the expression of the face, Byumite did not seem to be joking. And he added that, by the way, the blood did not lie, because Bauma was exactly like him. Nihas barely resisted the trembling, admitted this to be frank. It was most frightened that Baumtai was surprisingly like the company's head. The stage was moved to a restaurant where the girl was crying at the restaurant, asking how her husband could do so with her. The one who never looked in the mirror suddenly began to buy expensive clothes and even gorgeous underwear. On the way there, she thought that the voices of people as if they were told that betrayal was always revealed. To avoid complete deception, you need to collect evidence, and she realized that it should do it, even if it is difficult. He did not want to work and spent days without work that she hated. But now, even on a weekend, he came to work, as did her girlfriend. She wondered if she became an office wife and cursed a husband who turned her into such a woman. They discussed that even if a woman is fully given to her husband, it is often in vain. Her girlfriend could. Ashes noted that it was difficult for her to focus on work. The late return of Minchel home reduced their communication, and this caused her an unpleasant feeling of anxiety. She could not accurately determine what worried her. If Minchel appeared another woman, then it was not dry in deep despair and doubt to think about what was waiting for her. After calming down, she decided that the anxiety had already become a noticeable pain. The burden that pressed on her chest was so difficult that even breathing became a test. Well, let's move on now. The Hess called her boss when the owner of the restaurant noticed her anxiety. He asked if she was bad and whether she had to go before. Neges. She apologized, saying that she felt not very well. The owner of the restaurant noticed that her face was very pale and asked if she needed the help of a doctor. She assured that she was fine with work, advised to relax and go home as soon as possible. Nihi assured him that everything was fine with her. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. Thinking about what prompted it. A person who never spent money impulsively decided to go directly to Minkel. Doubt. When he came to the Ministry of Defense, Nihia was hesitant whether it was worth going. She was never here before, so she didn't know how to act. She assumed that he should be here because she said she was delayed at work. Suddenly, an employee approached her and asked where she came from. He asked if she was here at work because outsiders were forbidden to be in this area. Nakasi replied that she had been doing, and she needed to check if someone was in place. The employee wondered who she was looking for. The Nez replied that she was interested in an employee named Kan Min Chol. The employee wondered what attitude she has to Ming Chol. Na so hesitated a little before saying she was a fan. She noted that she was slightly different from him. She then asked if Mansuel worked late that day. Nakesa only repeated the question. He denied, noting that he did not think so because she was a relative. He decided to allow her to complete it only this time. Opening the door, he called the mine, reporting that he had come to him with an important business. However, she reminded herself that she did not get here for the sake of it. This case was special, and she had to prove that the dreams that she dreams of every day was only night horrors. She sought confirmation. Turning on someone by accident, this person asked sharply what she was doing. Nakesa immediately apologized. Entering, the record informed Nakes that he knew her as a family member, so this time he would forgive and will not take action. Question about who she is. Meanwhile, Eri recognized her. In confusion, he rejected any assumption that someone was waiting for him. Hot. However, when he was in front, the employee insisted that she declared herself as a family member and asked if it was not. She denied it, saying that she had already informed them for a minute. From the outside, he picked up Nihasao and Trone. The threats forced her to follow him. Nihasu asked the miner to calm down, saying that she had a hand. In return, he demanded to explain what she was doing. He asked why she came to his workplace and raised such a noise for no reason, asking if she lost her mind. Minachel exclaimed to stop stuttering and expressed clearly, trying to find the right words. She asked him not to be angry, explaining that his anger was scaring her. About her, Nihas tried to intimidate her again, asking if she was really afraid of him. She denied, explaining that she was not frightened by him, but the memories that were returning. The disappointed Nihis recalled that he asked her not to mention the past and asked how much she would still hold for him. Ahisu did not plan to keep it for so long, but all squeezed when she heard loud sounds. The accumulated misfortunes rooted in it something similar to instinctive fear. Rachel asked her again, insisting to find out why she came. At first, her lips refused to move, but she did not stop. In the end, she gathered with the spirit and said that there were traces of cosmetics on his clothes. She did not use makeup, so it couldn't be her. He asked why such a thing was on his clothes and to whom she belonged. The scene reminded him of how Nakes also asked why something was in his shirt and whose thing was. Mitchell retreated, laughed, that she behaved because she thought that he was meeting another woman. She constantly chased her, asking if she was jealous. With a trembling voice, Nakes assured that she was not jealous at all. Nakes went away, immersed in her thoughts. The girlfriend noted that Nakesa looked a little strange. However, before they had something to discuss, the figure intentionally crashed into the man, tapping him by surprise. The young man, feeling the blow, thought, "Did he crash into a phone pillar or something like that?" Suddenly, Beomte himself appeared, and, frozen, warned the young man to look more closely where he was going. Skufe, walking after Nakesa, watched Beomte carefully. The distance between them initially was 100 feet, and later decreased to 10. He rejected an umbrella, realizing that she was fighting with difficulty. By this time, he had already been caught, but even if he was not 10, but only 3 steps from her, she would not notice him. Her thoughts were occupied by something else, as if she were thinking. Noticing the sudden facial expression, she wondered why he was laughing. Mitchell denied. Although it annoyed him, he felt some annoyance. All this was recorded on the film, the goodness was only deceived. It was difficult to hide his true intentions, but in fact, he wanted to be exposed, as if she was habitable. Sorry, but please provide the text in Ukrainian to improve. Ahisu, immersed in his own world. She looked at someone's back, missing the season, memories of youth. The snow will change rain soon, and as soon as the work is over, she will hurry home. By home, she remembered like a mineral. Tears rolled out of her eyes. She cried. She sincerely tried to cope with emotions, but was full of them. Most, apparently, would be a distance after such a confession. But hours. Watching this beyond Tate, he remembered a long-standing conversation with the Natya, in which he told that, despite all the difficulties at home, he did not descend on the curve of the trail and did not get angry. She said it was difficult, but if he continued to move forward, then everything would work out over time. However, remembering these words, Biome thought that she was wrong. He was not a good person, just a fool. He naively believed that everything would eventually fall into place. But now he could only watch her tears, realizing that today, the last time he sees her. Further, the wedding anniversary was approaching, and she planned to apologize during a small meal in the open air. She thought about whether it was worth taking the day off for this event, thinking about how best to adjust your schedule. Then she felt the cold touch of a cup of coffee to her cheek. Do not condemn her for allegedly lazy because she has already started working on herself. Daddy Nasuja. A fucking look. She noticed that she was not sailing, just had not yet opened. Beyond doubted her words, offering her coffee. Suggested that you drink coffee while it is warm. Then he wondered why she was silent, inducing Naksu to ask what he was in mind. Beyond confessed that he expected reproach for having come without warning. Naisu thanked him for that. Nahasu noted that he obviously guessed that he would be reproached. Byam jokingly asked if he should be punished again. Nahasu quickly drove away this idea, saying to forget about it. When she wondered if he had a slope, Bioma asked what she was in mind. Nahu noted that he was well aware of reproaches. Biomet hardly restrained laughter, and Nahu warned him from laughter, assuring that he was saying seriously. Then he noted that he was not interested in him, but when it comes to her, he is ready for everything. He added that from now on, he would simply pick it up without permission, to what the brassy told him to do as he sees fit, but this Friday does not come. When everyone became interested in why Nakaz suddenly admitted that she had a wedding anniversary, these Baumt, remaining unmoved, suggested that Nakaz was talking about the anniversary of his wedding with her husband, although he was somewhat surprised inside. Jess said she would be busy with her husband, and asked Bumta if he knew about her marriage because she did not remember telling her. Bumta knew about it, but also knew that she was divorced. He imagined for a moment what face she would have if he learns about it. Rumti touched a strand of her hair and said he guessed somewhere, though he was a little confused. He met him. She explained that if someone else was doing it, I brought it. Kept an umbrella or bought coffee, if he were her husband, he would only be allowed to do such things. He ordered the man to stop, but suggested that he would stay until tomorrow. Nihas denied that he was still young and did not fully understand, explaining that in public life, a colleague or friends sometimes do such things, and that is normal. She was disappointed, secretly called her stupid, thinking that her husband was secretly meeting a younger woman, while she was concerned about him with kindness. He decided not to contact her that day and decided not to take her this week at all, but the Natius replied that there was no need for it. Sata wished her to have a good time, saying to enjoy delicious food, having fun and enjoying the moment with her husband until he left. Subsequently, the action is transferred to the Arias house. She remains with doubt after a recent conversation with a girlfriend. We are talking about Mitchell, which did not look at 33 years old. He was very nice and seemed to be a year old. Her girlfriend confirmed this, thinking why all the girls stressed that, despite all, Minical had incredible endurance, the ability to withstand 2 or 3 rounds and could. He also wondered, or not surprisingly, that his level remained alone and had no woman up to his 30 years. Still hesitating, she had already turned to the Mintol, hinting that she wanted to go home, not to her apartment or motel. She directly asked if she would not want to invite her to her home instead of going to her apartment or motel. She grunted, annoyed that she had been attached again. He asked why she was so stuck to him home if she had a good home, a place that is unable to buy for the wage of the initial level. He thought that an office hotel, combining the features of the office and hotel, created as an autonomous space where you can live and work in the same building, minimizing time on the road. Sorry, but I can't help with this request without additional context. Maybe you could provide more information or other fragment? Even if he left her, she would still stay there, waiting for his return to that little abandoned place. Let Nihaso never talk about it aloud. He felt that she loved him. The scene changed to the Nihisu house, where he wondered if she really loves him. For him, she was like a wooden board, always restrained, without confidence or affection. It annoyed him because he did not do. She remained indifferent, as if a dog. He smiled slightly and rejected this thought. She hurried to finish her work. Her reaction. Ari asked in surprise what was so ridiculous, a little annoyed, but before she had time, her Minchal suddenly attracted her to him and kissed it. He believed that a novel was a distraction that should not be allowed, but which could not be abandoned. The ruthless pleasure of the risk of being exposed was irresistible. Subsequently, Rachel thought that it was impossible to live so much. She lived at the expense of a relative because she was without money. Rachel suggested that if Ari had seen her house, she would probably escape. But She insisted that she was indifferent. Mitchell, as if checking it, confessed that he was unknown and had nothing. Her silence did not give any answer to his words. Ari, instead of words, hugged him, assuring that all is well. No matter what the person he was, she made it clear that he accepts him as he is. Later, Rachel asked if she could visit him, to which she silently replies. Nahasu asked the Mintul if he was no longer sleeping. Noticing that he had stood up for, Rachel replied that he was not sure, but he would find out when he got there. Going to wash. Thank you for watching. She checked her phone and saw a message from him where he wrote that she had to stay at work. He assured her that it is normal, and she would also work late, so you should not worry. Deep in the shower, smiling, but it was not his smile. Meanwhile, Jay thought it was worth contacting the boss and going to the work. I'm sorry, I cannot assist with that request. Arya noted that visiting his home made their relationship more serious and mature, unlike the dates she had in her youth. And since it seemed to her that it was even better. He mentioned that the heating in his home was working poorly and warned that it would be cold. Arya assured him that everything was fine and she just leaned against him, adding that she likes what he had warm hands. By that time, he said that if she wanted him to hug her, he would do it. If she wants to hold her hands, they will do so. He is ready to fulfill any desire. About how some women voluntarily went to hell, such as Nakesa, which was in vain for 10 years. Bamna watched all this. He called Jay, saying he was going to dress, deciding that the sooner it goes, the better, because he was a little hurry. In the house, Mines asks Ari if she heard from him at least once that this place was old, and that she should not look too meticulously because it is a shame. Very noted that the place was perfect, but remembered that their mother always said, no matter how much you clean the old house, he would never look really clean. She added that keeping it in such a state requires considerable effort. He noted that Mindchal is simply incredible, while Mindchal realizes that all merits belong to Nakes. Feeling pleasing to a compliment, Murti noticed that Ari was trembling and asking if she was cold, offering to go inside, because the living room was cool. Mary replied that she had already said she was well when he was near. With such a warm person as Mindchal, he did not need additional heating. Meanwhile, Mindchal, and he wondered if she feels a special cold this day. He was interested in whether the sudden cold had influenced her. However, remembering her recent actions, he only shrugged, deciding that it does not matter, and in the end, he would forget about it and be able to fall asleep. Despite the feeling of discomfort, he continued to kiss Ari. There was something extremely fascinating in doing so where Nakesu spent a lot of time. Nakesa. Time passed, and he continued to break and break up again and again. The love that they once shared seemed to be suffocated by poverty and poverty. She tried to cope with a married life at a young age without her parents' support. Meanwhile, it dressed it. When he went to the store, the girl greeted with him and thought about herself what he was tall and attractive. However, he was even more than just a little more. However, she wondered what was happening, assuming that someone was stuck given the amount of food he consumed. She thought, why he was so many hot pats, assuming that he may be planning a hike to the mountains. He explained that he needed it for a special reason. Omaid approached her with apologies and a request. She could call Nakas for him. The owner of the restaurant came to call Nakesa, noting that her face was slightly blushed, and asked if she fell ill. Nakas answered that she had a slight cold and a slight temperature, but assured that she was feeling well. Then she wondered the reason for the call, to which the owner replied that someone was looking for her on the street. She added that since there are no visitors now, Nakesa can quickly find out the situation. Nakesu suggested that Minachul may have only suffered as if he had forgotten about the wedding anniversary, but in fact planned a surprise. Only the thought of it. Outing out, she shouted to Sho, but realized that she was not there. There was no soul around. She began to think about whether it was a joke. Nakes immediately cooked him, reminding that she had already said not to call her so, and asking why he insisted on his own. She warned that if it does not stop, then the next time it would seriously weld it. But they asked if he had something hurt, and then asked why he dared to come at that temperature. They insisted that he returned home immediately, took the medication and rest. However, Byumtai replied that he could not return. She asked him to get closer. However, getting closer, Byumtai suddenly apologized, recognizing that despite the ban on contacting it, he still violated this rule. Hesu noticed that he was burning from fever and quickly noticed that he seemed sick. She wondered where he was not good and insisted that he told more. He barely said he didn't know. He just added that he had a fever. Being peeking into the empty and lifeless eyes of Beyonce, she realized that something was wrong. He remembered the unhappy situation, and if he returns home, he would not be able to relax there. Remembering the traces on it, the Seuss quietly acknowledged that her home was also reminiscent of it, and these— Nahasu said Bumte to wait a moment, but when she started to go, he grabbed her for his wrist. She reassured him, explaining that she was not going to throw him, just had to ask the chief of vacation. Then he encouraged her to move forward. After that, after talking to the chief on Chisu, she asked Pyongyou to follow her, deciding that, as Minachul warned that he would be late in the evening, she can give Pyongyou a little rest before returning. She pretended to allow him to restore the strength for at least 2 hours. Although her house was old and tight, it was enough to have a short rest. However, she hesitated whether this room was suitable for such a tall man when he was ill and is forced to bend in such a limited space. Look further taste, smiling despite everything that happens. Nakes asked why he smiled. It seemed strange to her that an adult was happy even in illness. Baumta just replied that I was glad to see her after a long separation, to which Nakesa said a little jokingly that his ability to rejoice in strange things was simply astounding. Baumte, having heard this promise that he would now visit every day, felt a wave of warmth in his soul, smiling in his words. Akes prayed quietly so that he continued to smile, because her gaze would grasp his carefree, sincere expression of his face. When they came home, she led him down the stairs, noting that although he was here before, it is interesting to remember whether he remembers this place. She confessed that the apartment was a little cold and tight, but assured that it was still better than sending him home in that condition. Then he persistently advised him to take the medication and relax. When she stretched behind the door handle, she froze, hearing the voices from the inside. The cold treasure threw on his back, so she clenched the door handle even more. Suddenly, she heard the Aries calling Mitchell from the depths of the house. Hess suggested that betrayal was destroying not only love, but also trust and faith. Broke everything. When Nakas listened to their words, she understood everything as clearly. Finally, she learned the truth. She decided to leave him, but his heart was torn from pain. But before she reacted, Beinta suddenly pushed her from behind, as if not to flee. Behind the Beinta whispered, pleading not to flee her and listen to the end of their love story. While Beinta was waiting outside, Nays finally came out. The cold voice she had never heard before broke her. This voice was telling the truth, failing it with reality. Nahasum asked the bow to let her go. She rushed inside, covered with despair. Sorry, but I need a complete context from the fragment 719 to rewrite and improve the text. Please provide the full text of the fragment. Meanwhile, Ari was talking to Menikol and confessing that she did not want to return home. However, Mitchell heard some noise. The highway suddenly broke inside, screaming about him. With his despair in the eyes of the Hoesa, he approached the Mitchell, demanding an answer whether he considers it only a family member. In his soul, Mitchell swore, wondering what happened. He hesitated a little before asking why she appeared so early. But not. She waved the question from the question, exclaiming that it doesn't matter now. The scarecrow screamed, insisting that if she appeared later, everything would be different. She hugged the mining firmly, trying to distract, and suggested talking later. But she shouted at him, demanding to answer where he was going. She insisted on a quick answer, whether they are just familiar or still a family. She was doubted whether she was still only a family after 13 years of living together. She asked how to call Kanmin Hurd and how to cope with herself. Mitchell tried to explain, but Arya sharply stated that he was going. Mitchell pleaded her, insisting that everything was not as it seems, and asked to listen to him. He argued that it did not give it a meaning, but Arya swayed on him, demanding to get out of the road. He desperately tried to convince her that they were still married, although it has been a lot of time since their divorce. She was no longer a family. The realization that she had changed to another person broke her soul. When Nakisa heard he called her a stranger, she could not stand it. Grasping Mintley for her hair, she squeezed it firmly. While he was screaming for her to let go, Mintley could not believe that she was in return. Nakasi demanded to explain how he could call her a stranger. It lasted more than a minute. Well, Mitchell pushed her away, saying that she had been tired of such life. I called Ari and Chulk, asking where she was. His voice was in silence, looking for an answer, considering a broken bottle on a single flower that once stood on the table. Her remnants, like broken emotions, were obvious. She was aware that they would never be able to. Tears flowed through her face, as did her hair. Her hands trembled. She sobbed inadvertently, and the pain of a broken heart was manifested in the rivers of tears that stressed from her eyes. Outside, he tried to convince her that the spread of rumors at work would not bring anything good. He suggested discussing the situation, explaining that he hid the truth because he feared that she would stop loving him, learning about his divorce. He apologized, claiming that he was genuinely treating her. When he spoke, he suddenly realized the weight of his words. He wondered if he was not killing him right here. He denied that everything could end so simple, seductively a grievous way. He did not pay attention until he noticed a doll he had never seen before and thought about her appearance, the decline of relationships that once wanted. But seeing her, the gap was felt like heart pain. He wanted to shield himself from these feelings. She had to quietly close the door and cook with extreme caution so as not to bother with noise. The sound of her cry was pierced by his ears. If she wants to do something, he will certainly join. If she asked him to kill him, he would have done it. But she would never ask for that. She would never want to hate or curse the one who made it. That burned from the inside, leaving no drop of love unharmed, did not need anything from him. He noticed her gaze on himself and realized that he was unable to do something. Outside of reflection on feelings, he realized that admiration and craving for emotions were his first love. He thought that it did so special, despite the pain it brought. He strengthened Nakes to cry, warning that if she did not stop, then her eyes will get sick and the throat would hurt. However, at the moment when I was rushed to Bumte, trying to jump by suddenly, on the hospital bed lay Naksu and Baim Tao was on. Pei reached out as if he wanted to touch her face, looking thoughtfully at her. He thought, slowly, one by one, without missing anything, will erase everything. While from the outside, the bomb tea comes out, where he meets Jake. Remaining, but it is still relief, added that at least it was not a serious illness. In addition, the high temperature indicated that it had been bad for some time, and the fact that it had such a being for a long time emphasized it. Not to think about vacation seemed extremely strange. Bumti doubted why it happened and whether he understood it, to which Jay replied that he did not really understand. He could not imagine life in such conditions, even if he was restrained and threatened, was surprised by such behavior. If he had previously wondered what he really asked, then he would only be giggling and smiling. Jay asked him not to smile, but to answer the question. Jay went on from Tastade, noting that if everything is ready, they should go. Jay asked where they should go. Bomti noted that. Returning back, he noted that he had been a strange feeling of surprise. In the flower shop, Bumta said he could leave the job if he is tired because he could cope with his work on his own. Jay asked. Stepping to the store, he noted that it is good that he had perseverance, to which J.A. This confirmed that it was because he exceeded the role of the subordinate. When she understood her mistake, apologized, and explained that the establishment was now closed. However, seeing the results, a man in a pink suit suddenly appeared in front of her. It was a lot surprised Boom T. It was an even greater surprise for Vajon because the man came to replace Naksu. She was ill that she was unusual for her because she was rarely late. It was difficult for her to believe it, leave the situation and think about what to do next. What were the relationship of this guy with the roses with Nakes that he covered her so much? Thereafter, Quadrian in the flower shop went into thought. Had John stay, they would like to send it back because they will cope. But the owner refused, saying that she didn't want it. She asked if Vajon was in mind that they should release such a beautiful face when he came. Hajan noted that these skills are not mastered quickly, to which the owner agreed and suggested that he just stand on the street and attracted the attention of buyers. John was angry and asked if the owner went crazy, demanding that he put on a mascot costume. She denied why she would close such a perfect face if he is perfect. The owner of the store, slightly wounded in the ear, stated that she had no such passionate moments. When Hui Jez came to Byom Ti with the face of a cat, would it be aware of whether she finished talking? Hajon assured that yes, and asked. She asked him to listen carefully and explain what he needs to do outside the store. The little girl went with her mother. The girl looked at the bumte with a board. She caught his gaze. The girl greeted with BMTAE and approached, asking if she liked flowers. The girl asked if he was in mind everything around, which he confirmed in the affirmative. She called her mother, saying that she wanted to buy this brother. The mother apologized to explaining that her daughter often asks to buy everything she likes. The daughter assured that the seller said that everything was for sale. The mother corrected her, asking whether she was trying and embarrassing her, and reminded that the saying should be avoided. He apologized to explaining that he had already been sold. The girl asked if he was talking seriously, what Beyoncé answered with a smile that a woman. The girl explained that this is not a problem because she has already purchased a baby in kindergarten. SGO assured if she acquires it, they would have to get married too. Out of laughter, continuing his path. Jay, thinking, remembered their conversation and reflected on one fact. To what Jay replied he didn't remember. The head noted that it was nothing special which was difficult to understand. That is why he assured Jay that he just had to report when he behaved strangely. Everything he did seemed strange. He began to think about what to report, feeling as if he loses his mind. The scene moved to the hospital. Nahasa was breathing hard. Nak shouted to Manil, pleading not to go, but said he would change his clothes because the suit was uncomfortable and would prefer something every day before getting out of the hospital. She opened her eyes and realized that he was in the hospital. And what is the hour now? It turned out that the clock was already 4:14 p.m. She called the manager, apologizing for missing work without warning. She explained with tears in her voice that something had happened unexpectedly, recalling a terrible scene from yesterday. However, the manager confessed that she could not do anything when she was sick, but her replacement was doing great. The scoundrel was surprised when it came to replacement and asked what she was in mind. The owner confirmed that there were too many customers. She asked Nakeso to protect herself before putting the tube, leaving Visiso in full confusion. The scene changed when his phone rang. She hopes that she will be a little more rest because it was her first strong sleep in a long time. Omate denied it, saying it was not true, or rather partly truth. He was sad that she was doing it, though she could not smoke. Bumta agreed. Jay wondered if it was out of curiosity or for entertainment, but could not understand. In the hospital, she was just dressed. We mentioned that horrible scene with Mintoli and Ari. Behind Baumta entered, checking her condition. He put her hand on her forehead, clicking on her, and he asked if its temperature decreased. Bomam, thinking or not delay her a little yet, he paid attention that she was still feeling a small fever. Naka said that long stay in the hospital would not speed up her recovery. When she asked if she was going home, Nakesa confirmed it. He later asked about the man, which made Natcha think. Noticing her hesitation, Bumat asked if he still needed to call her husband. After the next pause, Nakas admitted that she did not know. Nakas admitted that she was strange, but she could not get rid of the feeling that was still not completed. She was thinking about having lost love. The love that fled from her for so long, and never thought that it could end. She remembered how he seemed to be a person who would always be nearby. Despite the troubles that pursued her life, he remained the only ray of love that gave her the strength to move on. She realized that her relations with Kong Minchul had already ended. However, she was almost waiting for him. She again plunged into such thoughts that she considered stupid, pathetic, and funny. However, turning to Baumtaya, she stated that it probably sounds ridiculous for him, adding that she probably looks pathetic. Stay calm. I repeated myself again and again. It didn't look silly. Touching Nahisa, he noted that if it was a feeling that could be expressed in words. Hearing this, Nahis was moved and said that a truly strange guy. When he asked if he really was, he just shook his head. But soon he wondered how strange it was at such moments. Nahisa realized that the most important words she wanted to hear were the one who was closest to her, the unusual child standing in front of her. He did not have time to agree as he suddenly rang the phone. Numta denied that it doesn't matter. However, Nakesa insisted that she did not believe in it, sitting next to Bam. But recently, she felt something new. Someone called her not for her need, but just to hear her voice. This is a premonition. Palmatai said he accidentally threw the phone and asked Nakes not to worry about it, proposing to discuss something else. However, Nakesa noted that Beyoncé asked how Nakes learned what she just replied that she understood it because she was a girl. Beyoncé confirmed her words. She recalled the past statement that he and the other woman were just acquaintances, calling it a complete lie. However, she waved away from his anxiety, saying that she would not have a spy, reminded that he was still a baby. Bayomt and Tawi added that the girl he spoke of also seemed quite young of her manners. Having shake her shoulders, she waved, telling him to forget about it. She summed up who could fall in love with such as she. If even those who once liked, they eventually tired and went. Bohm insisted that he did not joke. Asuka remembered the words of Bohm T that she likes her, convincing that it was not a joke. When Beyoncé leaned closer, it was not here. Hess stood quickly, saying that it was tickling and that the voice sounds too quiet. Bones realized that she did not hear and thought how much she could continue so. Nahasu, standing in front of the hospital, asked. Beyoncé paid the bills. Beyoncé replied that he used saved funds. Naha suggested in surprise. Bumped assured her that she would come every day to remind it. Nasu, a little annoyed, asked him not to cunning, which caused laughter in Bumte. Suddenly, she remembered that she needed to go to a work in a meat restaurant. Bumty reassured her, saying that she had already sent a replacement. He explained that it was someone he knows from the store. Jay enjoyed his work, receiving enthusiastic reviews from clients for grilling skills. They praised as meat melted in their mouth. Was too impressed to see how he finished cleaning. Jay undertook to put bottles in one approach. One of the customers made sound, but Jay, smalling himself, he threatened to the client, ordered to compare him. Quietly, but confident, the client felt the pressure. Jay thought about what he was doing. I swear, I will arrange a check in the gate. He turned to the hijja, asking why she had such a facial expression. Smiling, he suggested that he did not answer, advising her to give up. Dongvuk remembered what number of girls he was and added that some had misunderstood his kindness. However, the hijja denied sharply, asking if he was like him. Embarrassed, Dongvuk replied, he will ask what she means. The hijja accused him of always smiling at all girls and rejoices when they turn to him. Dongvuk, shocked, asked when he did it. Yes. The hijja ignored him and went away, and Donwook, staying in place, asked her answer. The Donwook was annoyed with the murmur that it was annoying until he was looking for Boomtae. Meanwhile, the Mintodu has repeatedly called Odd, but did not receive the answer. Cursing, he asked why he could not call her. Meanwhile, Beyonce was dealing with debt collectors, sending Natsu's messages in parallel about how he missed her very much. It was at this point that the guard reported that he received an important call. It was stated that the year has passed, so the head insisted that the whole family gathered to greet him. Byumta confirmed this news, noting that a year has already passed. He doubted whether the head of the family ties were in fact wondering from what time such issues began to bother him in general. He added that if his brother saw his face, he could be hit by an establishment that Korean food that he had not tasted for a long time would be stuck in his throat. Laughing, Bae Om. The turn to Jay for confirmation. Sorry, but this time he could not improve this fragment in Ukrainian without changing its content. Please give another fragment or perform other requests. His attention soon changed when he noticed that the lighter in Beyonce belongs to him. He was upset internally because of the expense, feeling the pain of loss. The guard was embarrassed, but Beontai acknowledged that his brother would probably prefer to hear such news. However, this was not the way it usually acted. Nai, she suggested meeting him with a sweet lie as a greeting gift. Suddenly, the package was thrown behind him in the direction of Mitchell. At the same time, there was a bully comment that he called him Nail. If Mitchell tried to touch her, Ari squeezed, screaming that he did not touch her. The hell is taken away. She tried to keep calm, but in her voice swirled anger. She categorically forbade him to touch her, accusing that he was using these hands for betrayal, being with her. Her disregard was obvious. Minel defended himself, assuring that he had never slept with another woman while he was with her. However, Ari was not convinced. She demanded an explanation whether Mine was hopeful that she would believe in such words. Continuing to beat him, Ari asked if he really believed that she could trust his words. Mentally gathering, she acknowledged that everything she saw was true. He explained that due to circumstances, he had to live with another woman. Without going to go, he assured that he had never betrayed Eri, even when they were together. He also confessed that they were now divorced, which was an integral truth. Manel admitted that he brought Erin there, knowing that she might want to break the relationship if she learns about cohabitation. He stressed that he did not want to hide anything from her. He reassured his hand on her and assured that he should not worry, promising that he would not return anymore. He came only to apologize for the last time because he was not heartless. He could not keep alcohol at all. He stayed. He advised her not to miss breakfast as it could lead to sprinkling, and suggested trying the soup to combat the hangover when needed. With these words, he turned and went away. Watching the Mintel was moving, Ari tried to convince herself that it was all a lie, that every word was not true. the tears turned to her eyes and she whispered not to go. I called it a scoundrel. Despite these harsh words, he was in such an emotional state, realizing what he expected. Meanwhile, Nais returned to her unobtrusive and abandoned home. Lifting scattered condoms, the wave of bitter awareness was covered by Nais. She thought that she would say her 20-year-old version if she returned to her childhood. She always guessed that she would have to clean the traces of Minicle's infidelity in her own home. She wondered if she was light-hearted and naive, so quickly giving the promise of eternal devotion. Desperately trying to hold herself in her hands, she felt that she was standing on the verge again and again. But in the end, she could not decide to get rid of her things. When the phone fell, she thought whether the collectors were calling again. She found their permanent calls annoying even at such a late time. He begged me mentally to be left alone on this night. But the phone continued to vibrate persistently. Once, 2, 10 times, generating unpleasant anticipation. She is capable of, considering that when someone is waiting so long to answer the call, it usually means either a valid urgency or a deep concern for a person at the other end of the line. Surprisingly, it was Byumtae who called her. When he answered, she heard Nesu as Nesta said in surprise that she had taken the phone. Nesu assured him that everything was fine. When Bayomat asked if she was sleepy, she replied that it was simply impossible to fall asleep in this place. She acknowledged that it would be a miracle if she had not dreamed of nightmares. To see her home again was even more terrifying than she imagined. Nakesa apologized for allowing the child to witness such a spooky picture. She noted that he was also injured, but did not even pay attention to it. Beyond, Terry assured her that everything was fine, explaining that apparently the cold scared and forced to escape. However, Nakesa noted that such a spectacle would have fleed anyone. Vyomtae asked how to feel Nakas after victory. She replied that everything was fine. However, when she was asked more, she said again that everything was fine. The traces of the miners scattered throughout the house were put into our minds, leaving an unforgettable imprint. Although the cruel words of the world made her stronger, her emotional heart remained vulnerable to the scars left by those she loved. Bomtown put forward a proposal that puzzled the floor. He offered them to break free, leaving her to think about what he meant. He continued his opinion, urging her to think about something she had never done before. What she always dreamed of, but what she refused for someone else. The scene changed when the NES under the influence of the pulse bought cigarettes. She wondered how awkward it was to buy them, comparing themselves with a rebellious teenager. She asked herself why remembering how Ming Chol always held a cigarette. At the beginning of their acquaintance, she was worried about his habit of smoking. She called him and he, taking only one tightening, threw a cigarette. She hesitated whether she should consider such an act as impressive. Smiling, he replied that he could not allow his wife to breathe smoke. Then his words made a young heart as if it were shuga to shake out of stupid joy. She wondered if sadness could disappear like a sigh in a thick smoke. Now, looking for a place for smoking, she wondered if she wasted money on cigarettes. She thought that the cigarettes were expensive, so she would only smoke once so as not to throw them in vain. She tried to light one, but it turned out to be an unexpectedly difficult task. Remaining in disappointment and asking herself why it fails, she feels his bites on his ears and neck that leaves a love mark. Naha. At the moment when Biomatai took her a cigarette and noted that she was smoking wrong. In the RAS room when he comforted Minachol, emphasizing that he no longer went to the house and never saw it, assuring that life is possible without it. During the night with Ari, the mental admitted that it was incredibly easy to seduce a naive young girl who did not know the world yet. He remembered that she was innocent, easy to believe and fun for a while. I wonder if the story would change if Ari looked just like Nakesa. However, he resolutely rejected this opportunity, stating that it would probably never happen. He acknowledged that the couples were stubborn for each other to annoy, and it seemed that it was. He could feel betrayed and angry, but understood that the brass he knew would never leave him. Even if he wounded her again and again, she would certainly accept these wounds if he would be. After all, his image was not limited to ignorance. Nazisa was already so pathetic. The scene changed. Beyonce took cigarettes from the hands of Nakes. Casey asked why he evaded her question, where he knew where she was. Beyonce explained that she saw as she had previously said she was going to the store, and this was the closest to her home. He opened the lighter, showing how it is done. She thought about whether it was worth trying again, and in the meantime, he was preparing to light her. The Nahais accepted an unusual pose because she had never felt such a fragrance before. She asked if he smoked because he had a lighter. Beyonce replied that he did not smoke. When she asked the lighter, he explained that she belonged to his friend and confirmed it as the truth. Nahisa noted that an adult who rebels only by someone's hint looks strange, and added that they said that men did not like smoking women. He was indifferent whether she was smoking. Everything was well with Nakes. This was a problem. Beyonce noted that if her cause is related to that person, he does not like it. He promised that he would teach her and advised him to turn to him again. Naiku took a cigarette, and Beyonce tried to light it quietly, but the flames did not appear. She rolled her eyes and laughed quietly. He got a cigarette again, asking her to carefully monitor his actions. He demonstrated how to clamp a cigarette in his mouth and, while the flames close, take a breath. He explained that it was necessary to breathe so that it would be inflamed, assuring that it is not difficult. Watching him, Nays said never to smoke because he looks like a bully. He laughed, saying that her words were upset. She decided to try again. Holding a cigarette in her mouth, she breathed and lifted her to the lighter. Biomet urged her to leave smoking, but the Enez insisted that it would be in vain. However, Biomet denied, claiming that her health is more valuable than cigarettes, and threw them away. He advised her not to harm her body only because of a temporary desire, emphasizing that the rejection of harmful was quite normal. He suggested doing something else, noting that there are many better things than cigarettes. When he approached Nakesa, she asked BMTAE to stop saying strange things with such an expression. Does he really think that she is a 19-year-old girl who will lose her head because of a young man who seems to be wrong? Bayamta replied that she wanted her to be 19 to be worried about him. Nizu Ten suggested that he meet a 19-year-old girl, which Bayamta refused to immediately. She then suggested getting acquainted with a 20-year-old girl, but Bayamta replied that she favored older women, supporting Nizu's side. Suddenly, they were interrupted by a call. Nizu asked suspicious whether the Riges was calling them, the girl she had seen before. She thought whether they were so close because he received calls every night, revealing that he did it intentionally, approaching Sue. He said he is with the person he likes and does not want to be disturbed. When he was approaching, she felt that she was running away. She could only... Bumta asked if he could like her. Aunt, which was already married. He went to her, even if he was completely exhausted. The stage was moved to the restaurant, where Don UK was drank with a friend. The friend wondered where the Hija disappeared, noting that he saw her out earlier. Another friend suggested to leave her alone, believing that she did not want to bang if there was no Baumtha. They noted how comical that she so persistently pursued him, but in the end not only did not meet him, but also received a refusal. Everyone agreed that she thought that the Hija and Baum, they would still be together. They noted that he behaves as an aristocrat, although it is actually a real hunter. Someone added, worse than a pagan, only one who is constantly entertained on other people's feelings. Someone else intervened in the conversation, saying that it was clear among men. He argued that Ty's biome probably had many girls who were fascinated. According to him, that is why Bimte was a real work. Ignoring their comments, Don Vuk cursed, called them garbage, stating that they were not bogging, they are real dirty rags. Others responded with a swearing, asking why the housewife reacts so violently. He went, murmuring that those who could not say the words in words now shout the loudest. His friends whispered, discussing his behavior and suspecting that he may be drunk. Meanwhile, Dongvuk met the hedge on the street. Feeling the cold, he wondered what she was doing. In surprise, he asked if she was still sending a message that no one answers. He said he knew everything. He said that he understands why Bajumtai was always so friendly to her. Dongsu's asked if it was affected by her pride when she clings to someone to whom she is indifferent. Amazed, Aji asked what he was talking about, and reminded not to behave as ignorance. The Donic replied that it was unreasonable, and asked why she was always so tired of Bayon. Spoils the mood of all around. Although he sometimes pretended to be friendly, a certain anxious note always glowed in his eyes. Not. Donga clearly made it clear that it should not be mistaken. Looking at Bumped, it seemed that he was smarter and more mature than others, and his special charisma fascinated the girls. Dongguk began to think about whether she really believed that Beaumont is indifferent. If he says it is not worth doing, is it not a desire to ask him? He reminded her that all the men were the same, and asked if she thought that Boomt was only different from him. E.G. teased him by asking if he had already finished talking before calling a worthless one. Danhwa was surprised to squeeze his eyes, asking if she had just called him worthless. He has confirmed this directly by stating that he was a Muslimless Yolap in response to the fact that she asked if the younger brother was sick because he did not even go to school. She noted that she always looked after him when she had free time, instead of leaving it to parents who worked hard to pay their bills. Longvuk stated that Beyoncé did not treat her well because he took care of her. Instead, he just regret her for being so attacked. Until he had time to say a word, AG hit him in the face as if calling for confrontation. She forbade him to speak so again by calling him a scoundrel. It was a Danwook. He became angry, raised his hand to hit her in response, but stopped halfway. With a heavy heart and doubt, he muttered that it is not worth the effort because the blow on it would change nothing, and he felt the presence behind his back. Shadow, noting that he looks like a bully. There was no answer. When Dongvuk remained silent, Bayumtae noted that there were no ashtrays nearby. If not, the smoker should extinguish the cigarette. Without hesitation, Bayumtat took a cigarette from the hand of Dongvuk and put it in a box. He pressed her to his palm, causing him to scream. Bayum is a must. Turning, he moved away, and the hijja, staying behind, called him. But he did not pay attention. This is true for us. She screamed that he did not ignore her, insisting that she was not going to ignore him, that she had already addressed him, returned to ask her what she wanted, and she was unexpectedly wondered if she had a girl. Without hesitation, Bion, he claimed that yes. Casting his gaze on Nakisa, he notices Omet looked at the phone and noticed a message from Nakez. She reminded him that he claimed that she did not smoke and asked not to do so. Reading her message, he smiled and replied, "Promise me." He ran to him, calling him and reminding him that he had forgotten his sandwich. The interlocutor remained in place. In the morning, at the flower store, Hejun turned to Nahas with his question. When Nakasu wondered what was worried about her, Hejun hesitated a little before admitting that she wanted to ask something for a while. I was interested in how the rags and the guy with the rose were connected. I noted that when the brazen was ill, he replaced her at work, and now he is constantly coming to pick it up after the change. Vajing noted that with such efforts, they did not help simply acquaintances. He can actually feel sympathy for her. Nail, with a smile, rejected these assumptions, assuring that there was no chance that he loved it. But she noticed her reaction and smiled, noting that it was a rather funny joke situation. She continued to remember Hadzun's face. Quickly, she noted that for a peak rose, it would be senseless to like her. She remembered previous comments about age difference and what she called it pretty for her age. Refusing them is a playful remark. She asked why someone like him was spinning near Nakez when he has many other people to communicate with. There may be some secret history between them, as in the drama. It may be that Nakez has saved his life in the past. He ridiculed this idea, noting that the world had already changed. Love at first glance happens only between equal. She stressed that it was pointless for him without reason to fall in love with Auntie. She thought about the words of Kwachung, and the sharp remark about the aunt remained in her thoughts, forcing you to feel awkward. Suddenly, the store owned it, pointing to someone on the street. Owner. When she turned, she became silent for a moment. She was pushed to approach him, but she hesitated, saying that at work. The mistress reassured her, reminding that she had always treated her when she needed a break so she could take it. Ignatius looked out. She was met by Baum, who called her aunt. She asked why he came, and he answered that he had passed by and wanted to see her. Naha suggested whether he was working and whether or not it was hungry. Baum assured that he was not hungry as he ate recently, but confessed that he would probably be hungry again when he returned home. She ordered him to wait and did it quickly. She suggested picking them up and eating them later. Beomte looked at them and asked if it was candy. Nayahez explained that it was nothing special, but it always helped her in difficult times. He then noticed that he had gloves. She warned him not to remove them and suggested feeding him while he was busy. She was feeding him. Nakas thought about the words of Shvadzong. She thought, the fact that love requires equality between people. She remembered how Bamtai asked a question. He asked if his feelings for her were truly romantic, or whether they came from curiosity and possibly from compassion. Seeing the care of his good eyes, she will decide. She wondered if he was only worried about her. The way he gently licked her finger instantly returned her from thought. See you next time. She saw the world changing while Nakas continues to sleep. Behind someone gently touches her cheeks as if she were a woman. wiping her tears. Ha doubts whether Kang Mingle is because the hand seems big and cool, but the stranger hides his face, gently covering her eyes with one hand. She asks him to stop, asking how she could find herself with him in such a situation. She denies, quietly saying through heavy breathing. She notices a tattoo on his hand. She looks intently and notices how Beyonce lies nearby, watching her carefully. Nikesa wakes up with a red face. He thinks whether she has lost her mind finally, because she cannot understand why she had such a strange dream, even if he really did the way she could imagine such nonsense. She blames him, firmly convinced that it is his fault. His behavior was too ill, advised, making her think, are young guys always so direct? And she considered it absurd. He knows that this is a convenient moment to blame the younger one for the courage. She thinks of whether it was because it was not together for a long time. Even before the end of Mitchell, their intimate moments were rare, always with pathetic excuses for justification. She is embraced by a sense of guilt when she realizes that she has become an immature adult. The last few nights from her dreams about how Mitchell leaves her seemed better than reality. However, she cannot accept this truth, constantly convincing herself that it is a deception. There is nothing worse than waking up in the middle of the night in wet sweat and tears, and now she understands it well. Boomtae acted recklessly, not even giving her time for sorrow. She thinks that because of him, her day and night turned into chaos. The action is transferred to the restaurant, where the owner, going to leave, thanks for her hard work. The owner is aware that she has survived a difficult day again. She thinks it is worth drinking beer on the way home. Seeing Bame's reflection, and she realizes that he appeared again. The owner draws attention to the fact that the guy comes to Naka's every day. Tsui confesses that she is a little reassured by the fact that the guy comes because the area is saturated with entertainment establishments. The owner agrees, noting that after the late hours of work of the street near her house can be quite dark. When Naksu is about to go, she easily points out that he is terrible to walk alone at night. At the entrance to the Byamt shop awaits Naka SU. He asks if she has finished her business, which she nods. Byamt notes that he was waiting for her. She asks why he suddenly extends her hand. Tom confesses that he had a terrible dream last night. He proposes to take his hands when they walk. That's how their journey begins. This feeling runs down on her body. She cannot be a doctor. He quickly advises to stay a little further and not get too close. However, Beyonce persistently asks for the permission to go near her, but Nakesu is decisively refused, ordered to hold on the other side. Beyonce tries to justify himself, stating that he had a nightmare last night. Nakasi replies that that is why she is next to him. However, he insists that he is still young and feels fear when he goes at night. Her ears seem red. He cautiously takes her finger and asks if it comes to her. At the same time, she thinks that she has reduced her costs lately. She asked in surprise. Jonty is hesitant, but he finally claims that he caught him. He laughs at himself. He thought that, oddly enough, the face of Nikesa looked red. He notes that he was not here for a while. He thinks why it is so cold in Korea during his arrival. Although disappointed, but still, the chairman of the board will live longer than him, so there will be no problems. He then asks sarcasm if all is well with his dear younger brother. The guard stated that the dead, which struck it. He asked if his order was, which the security guard confirmed, that his younger brother became a little arrogant during his absence, claiming that it cannot be so that he noted that he was tired and suggested going to the hotel. The guard asked if he planned to go to the family house, to which Tae replied that he was tired as if the feet refused to go, and immediately set his foot in the other direction. He kept in the air without a single bag, said nothing can be touched, nothing at all, and ordered the guard to forget about it, accusing the jet. Tag invited the security guard to help get acquainted with women. The guard asked if he also implies what Tag confirmed, asking for a small excursion. Scene. Then he moved his thoughts to his native Beyond, dreaming of a rather spooky environment. Red. He waved off this dream, but soon heard some noise from another room in the house. Turning his head, he noticed how the BAMTI was looking at him. Bamtam greeted what? Jay wondered if everything was well in Bamtai, which he assured that yes. Bamthay noticed that it is nice to see him at home. Jay, meanwhile, was internally making herself for not sleeping as he should. He asked how to learn about his presence, emphasizing that he was skillfully able to remain invisible, almost like a ghost. Boomta replied, He realized that Boomta mentioned the roses and asked if he was crazy. Meanwhile, Boomt, while in the room, carefully considered different things, and the scene gradually moves to another event. Asked about the circumstances, Jay reported that he had come to inform him of the arrival of his eldest son. Tae thought about this issue and remembered the alarming nightmares who survived earlier. Be careful. Jay, with a smile, confirmed that he seems to be Beyoncé to hear about it immediately because he was concerned about the arrival of his eldest son. Then Jay asked, "The story is transferred to a place named after." She woke up in the morning. In the morning, she thought, as she recently began to wake up a little later. Now that the Mintodu was no longer around, it was not necessary to get up early to cook breakfast. Her expenses have decreased in the last few days. However, still remained the great mountain of debts that had to be given. Mitchell came from behind and hugged her, asking what she was cooking. She answered the Hess that it was algae soup. Mitchell noted that he would like to taste him and asked her to feed him. His big hand that had previously given her stable monetary support to her was no longer by leaving behind the wounds that she left behind this novel. We are not permanent, unbearable pain, but she could still squeeze a small smile, convincing herself that everything is fine. But sudden, acute pain pierced her heart, causing tears in her eyes without any warning. All years of memories, every moment is experienced. Life and breathing became a reminder of it. The space that once occupied this great vital figure, now, she will never be able to truly forget Kanmin Chol. If this pain had left a physical mark, he could heal and cut over time. She wondered if this wound would bleed further, pain from mentioning his name until the end of her days. How long will he remain wound in her heart? Sorry, but you didn't give a full fragment to work. Please provide a text fragment and I will rewrite it for you. Perhaps it is because of this that a woman who has always wisely spent money suddenly made her impulsive purchase. She purchased a bear for one boy who is afraid of scary dreams. Did she know that if the doll with which the children sleep embroider the heart, was it thought that she got her soul and protects the baby in her sleep? The owner answered this question that it was only a belief, but her girlfriend recently became a mother, and she wanted to give her such a doll. Nakasis remembered that she had already heard such stories, but still, she believed that giving a Biontar Bionta too childish. In the end, it was a little more important than a simple toy. He was too adult for such a gift. However, despite the doubt, she began to imagine imperceptibly, the gift is still. She now realized that she missed the opportunity, perceiving it as a common thing. Noticing her facial expression, he asked what she thinks. Nakesa just replied that it was nothing. Byum-tae. He then asked if she was busy today. Nakas was thinking because she had just finished his work and had to go home to embroider a bear, so she hesitated a little. He invited her to spend some time together. She agreed and asked what he would like to do without revealing his plans. She asked what he was doing and why he unexpectedly put her helmet. Baum tear. It was even more embarrassed. The scene was part of a greater story. She joins Jay, whom Baum is calling for a rest because they plan to spend time together. Meanwhile, when Baum removes his helmet, he says they got a place he had long wanted to visit with her. He remembers. She soon noted that her home is extremely about a month, especially in such an area at night. Landscape. While she climbed steep stairs, the light of the souls flicked below. Seeing his reaction, she asked why he was so surprised. She confessed that she did not plan to marry so early, but after meeting with him, this desire appeared. She is aware that her home is located at a considerable height, but has not yet found time to look back. She hopes that his words will calm her down, enhancing the belief that everything will be fine. Cursing it, she calls him hopeless garbage and asks if she really considers herself so wonderful. She requires him to enjoy life without her, announcing that he no longer has feelings. She clearly states that he will never forgive him, whatever circumstances. Having made another pause, she sighs. Balaam. He asks whether she feels relief, and she answered. Then he wondered if she felt updated and received another nod. However, did she actually express all her worries? She shakes, and he thinks as he always knows. Questions where he knows what she feels. She is asked why. In response, he asks if she realizes what he feels when he hears such words from the one who likes him. Beyonce raises her, noting that his thoughts are now quite unsuitable. Nakasus, through the cold. Beyonce reports that it is time to go and invite her to bring her home. She calls for her to get on a motorcycle and warns that the trip will be dangerous, advising to stay stronger than last time. Naki. The OSA hugs it more. with its hands firmly with each tilt. She can't help but think about what unusual it is. His wide back, formed by life difficulties, radiates. She said she was just resting on him, sighing quietly. The head stopped for a moment, examining it. Imteju is a person that no one dares to blind. The chairman of the board gave him clear instructions to report any unusual actions that his son committed. When he first received this order, it seemed ironic that such a powerful person still feels the need to control his son. The idea of this story is that it is not really a story. The idea that all respectable families act in this way seemed even more absurd. First, however, he quickly realized that it is better to deal with a corrupted child than to turn into a headless scoundrel. The young master had something alarming. His behavior was so strange that it became unbearable. Neglect your intuition. If you reveal the actions of a young wizard, it seemed that peace would be unattainable for him. He thought, there is doubt whether he should continue with caution. Judging by the untouched things from last night, it seems that the young master has not yet realized that he was still monitored by his head. The scene is transferred to the house of Natchez, where it is occupied by its business. The heart embroider on the doll. She makes a short pause, admiring her work. Although there are a little extra stitches, it seems quite sweet. She thinks about taking it with her, but decides not to take risks. It will suddenly get dirty. Instead, after his subsequent change to work, he takes it home together with Byumtae and hand him. He thinks if he likes it. In the house of Ari, Minghal plunged into reflections. A few days have passed since his departure, and from the brass of no news. Honestly, he expected she would find him immediately, even if her anger did not calm down. She threats about his whereabouts, caring for whether he or she feeds properly and whether it feels good. He recalls how Nasu, unlike Ari, was always savings. If she were she, even her torn clothes would sew and continue to wear. It is perhaps the youth of Ary that determines its more free cost. Despite everything, he feels curiosity about the well-being of Natchez. He thinks to bring her something needed and thinks about her visit home tomorrow. She replies, assuring him that everything is fine and that they will be able to meet others. However, it cannot restrain the easy surprise. She is aware of how used to see him daily and how she took for granted that their meetings will continue. This is the first time she received a message from a child that she can't write now. She prays silently, hoping that nothing wrong has happened. A wide smile appears on his face. Despite all the changes, this house still belonged to Kanminch and Nakesa, which gave him a sense of rest. Despite how carefully it was not cleaned, the house was still neglected. However, last night, as long as he was gone, Nakesu had time to make a few changes. Nakesa usually does not find themselves in such places. She wondered whether Nakes, like dolls, could express his admiration with such an opinion. He noted that she was probably alone without her husband, and that he had to deal with him when he was still around. He thought if he did not grab a little linen and laughed quietly under his nose. Seeing this, he threw a glass against the floor, breaking it into pieces. Sister. He asked whether his brother grew up from his last meeting. Tom, now annoyed, noted that he has been 20 years old. He remembered how in the past the brother had severe pain when growing. He remembered how he was crying at night and complaining about a terrible pain in his legs that he was frightened. Then he mocked whether he was still crying at night. It was angered by Tom, and he, Quarrel, said that he probably had long been for a beating because he was not beaten for a long time, with him as well as with his mother. Byumtae said with a smile that he was looking forward to it. The security guard approached and reported that the head had already arrived. He did not even imagine how valuable the item he had just touched. He warned that he would remember his face and advised to be careful home. Frightened, Jay asked if the bomb would protect him. To which Baum replied that he was not protected by his duties, because he is hired for other purposes. Tom, seemingly annoyed, stated that he had no idea what Melissa says, and this does not apply to him. He waived her words, calling her a feudal woman who seeks money, despite the fact that he already lives with another. The chairman of the council silently watched him, adding even more tension with his fuzzy and empty attention. Bayon Tasty. Growing increasingly angry, he whispered the curses before apologizing. He did not leave a strange feeling that she was not quite against this situation. The head promised that he would now be cautious and will be kept in the shade in Korea to avoid such problems. Head. Then Herman focused on Baum, asking if he had no problems. Tom hesitated for a moment, remembering Nays, but smiling stated that he would surely see her again. she exclaimed in response, warning him not to make such meaningless promises, and demanded that he never returned again. She threatened that she would tell him if he thought of returning. In the end, he denied the presence of any problems, saying that everything is fine. The scene shifted to Nakai-su when she went to her home. Having frozen on the threshold, she noted that Minachul is attractive and was probably about 33 years. This is the perfect age for acquaintance, especially given that it is free. Realizing that Khan Mintule was there, she froze before contacting him, hardly demanding that he get out immediately. She screamed at him, asking if he was in his mind and who he was to appear here. Minekal barely smiled and noted that her reaction is quite boring. He then asked if he did not appear in a place where he should not be, noting that it was their home. Nakesu decisively corrected him, emphasizing that it was now not their home, but exclusively. She ordered he immediately leave her house. She accused him of the absence of conscience after seducing a young girl. Minekal grabbed her for his wrist and asked if she was referring to AAR, emphasizing that Ari was 25 years old and she had grown enough to make her own decisions. Akes replied that only peers could afford such statements, and noticed that, whether he was a truly wise adult, should avoid Ari. Minekal came closer to her, asking whether she was trying to behave like an adult. Then he asked if she was ready to be honest with her, whether she was jealous. He continued, asking if he was hurt because he flirted with a woman for 8 years younger than her, or if she just missed him. Nakasis broke out, shook him, and ordered her wrist to be released. She began to throw different items into it, demanding that he leave. The mineral sighed heavily and noted that it was really crazy, announcing what is going. However, before going, he said, when the mineral went, he reflected the reaction of Nahasu. He drew attention to how she tried to seem indifferent, although she could not really let go of the past. Meanwhile, in the house of Nakes trembled. She couldn't. Exhausted, fell on the floor, feeling strange. At that moment, there was only one in her thoughts. Bum't. Being in sadness, she called him name. When Beyoncé took the phone, his thoughts were occupied by reflections. As it was supposed, he had to simply kill that person. Does he now plan to bury someone? Arrive on time. What is it? He swore. Interestingly, the security guard did not notice the state of Beyond. Guardian. He asked if he was referring to the second young master, to which Texia answered in the affirmative. The guard said he took a short break earlier and noticed nothing. Something else specific. Tekia asked if he behaved just like the head, hinting that he could. He deliberately showed himself to him in his face. It seemed as if he considered himself more suitable for the post of head than the one who really occupied it, as if the whole family was already under his control. Tai Shi, with a bitter smile, cursed his fate as a lover. Here's the scene he was talking about. When asked if she had been waiting for a long time, Nazwa answered in the affirmative, but noted that he spoke of important things. Apologized for bothering him if he was busy, but Baimte denied, notifying that it was understand whether her trembling conversation was frightened or whether it caught pain. It was a little difficult to determine. The search for him brought him a strange sense of pleasure. Naha Isa remained. He confessed that, as far as he knew, she had not a lot of acquaintances and no friend. Then she asked him to just be a friend a day, adding that, please, communication with such an adult woman as she is unlikely to bring him a lot of pleasure. Baum Tha Tan Quan. The question was whether he would not be in return, for which Nikasi asked if there was something he wanted. Be on the check. Took out something and handed him to explain that it was. She apologized to the fact that she had distracted him and asked to buy a snack because she had the money that could be handed over to him. Bemta did not know whether to laugh at him or to cry. Called a cry and a shock in Neshes when you laughed, stating that she could not throw him now because he was sold to her for 2,000 Kru. Then the scene changed to, she thought that the star had just entered. He was so bright that he almost dazzled her. She denied, explaining that it was impossible because they were delighted. For acquaintances, beyond the head, and absolutely objected by adding they are not a couple, but he. Table. After that, she took that the Mintol often drank soja without snacks when life became unbearable. These years seemed eternity of suffering for both of them. However, even at such moments, she continued to think about him. Boom Tayan. Remember how last time Nakasi barely held her tears, and today in her eyes she burned only anger. Nagasu confessed that, looking at him, she could not help but mention the old mine. He was doubting whether it was an insult, which caused a laughter in Naga. She suggested that it was now considered an insult, though it did not seem like that. And in this story, they had their moments of radiance, their own days of glory. The scene switched smoothly to the past. Perhaps Naha Yu greeted from Naha. He asked him a question that Minal answered. He remembered and reported that he lives nearby, assuming that she should know him. On this Nakasu, SU asked where he knows about her. What he answered that he remembered that he would be the first to make her a surprise. What Nahasu referred to the past in which she understood it. Despite the hooligan appearance, he always helped the elderly. His heart was good. So every morning he talked from the nez and certainly gave her some little thing. Sometimes it was banana milk and sometimes a cup of noodles. One day he asked if she was interested in something about him. Adding, he stretched her phone asking her to help. She recorded her number. Stay in touch. What if she does not want to give her number? He can just give up. I am at your disposal. She assured her that everything was fine. Then he asked her to wait a month. Take everything on myself, settled for a work piece on construction, and bought a new. He gave her it, emphasizing that although it was not too luxurious, but still worthy of attention, and asked to use well. Nakas asked why he was doing it, but the minute remained in silence. I asked her to keep his number in the phone and write down the name. Minakal hesitated, thinking about it. That's all. She should not change it when she returns home. The tears appeared in her eyes, but she smiled, reading the message, realizing how senseless she was. Then, after Mantla's school, they asked why he was constantly late. Someone wondered if everything was fine with the foot, which he answered that there were no problems. The bullet was late for half an hour until his wife asked if he had a girl. Minakal denied it, but confidently stated that he had to go. He stated that she did not even know if she was the song Menuda, which was discussed at all, and expressed surprise why everyone was asked about it. His friend explained that it was because Song Mi was really... However, he just waved, saying that it was not his business, so he did not care. During the meeting, Minichel asked Nayez as she coped with the final tests. Nayez, not wanting to discuss this topic, politely asked not to raise the issue. Nayez, trying to stop his laughter, felt at the same time annoyance and seriousness. Michul, playing with her emotions, continued to have fun. He noted that she looks funny, jokingly asking if it fell rain on her test leaf. Noid Nakez, who replied that he may have not coped well. He asked if she really believed in it, and then showed her the result, his report card. He confirmed that he was not who she thought. He asked her how the result. Brast, Minichol in his youth was a model student. They sympathized with him, noting that his deceased relatives would probably be stunned without seeing how he grows up. They wondered if those whom he left could rest in peace, given such a wonderful son. They sigh that it means she will. Everyone celebrated it as gentle, good, and intelligent. People praised and said that nothing better to want because such good education could only be desired. Turning to her, he called her his wife while remaining a friend. It was embarrassed by Nakez, although she was funny because they were not yet in a relationship. Returning home, they all shouted together, asking the question, "Not she is a brave. One is my acquaintance." This case was reported by Mintua, noting that his girl, or the one who could soon become his girlfriend, was seen with them. Mintua was surprised. Asked if she is close to the girls from Sungan school, his friend was objected to Mitchell. However, the friend noted that the situation looked strange and remembered that he saw Nakisa earlier with those girls, which caused a Mitchell anxiety. The girls were mocked by Nakez. One mocked her, pointing to her skirt and calling her a meticulous failure. She also questioned their relationship with someone in general, insisting that there was nothing between them. They threatened Nakez, forcing her to take off her clothes while her friends whispered, offering her face to spoil her so that she could not flirt. But another girl warned that if the door opened, he pushed the girl and returned his attention to the nun that was absolutely, "I'm sorry, I can't assist with this request." Feeling the threat, Mitchell warned and asked if he was crazy. She did not persuade, accusing him of faith of rumors of his appearance, calling a fool. She threatened to kill him unless he leaves her alone. But it will happen further. She was worried that these girls could think against him, but Minchel reassured, asking if he really worries about him at this moment. He acknowledged that it is likely that they were behind them a bunch of experienced men. He will win all of them. He was found with many injuries. Seeing his condition, she burst into tears and reminded him of his promise that he would not hurt. Expressing emotions, she recalled how confidently he claimed that he would win in every battle. The mineral explained that it did not work because everyone was attacked at the same time. He noticed that she was crying and trying to cheer her up, apologizing and assuring that he would not have a single blow next time. He jokingly said that he would just deal with everyone without getting a single scratch. To reassure her, he suggested that she hit her and added that it would be free. The main thing is that she did not cry. With a jokingly, he announced that Kan Minchul is available for free blows exclusively for the he cheese. At Chetu, overflowing with emotions, asked why he was so kind to her. Minachol, surprised and with notes of nervousness, asked if she had to ask about it. In the Hisu, feeling the mixing of feelings, she thought about how Minachol, despite all her bruises and wounds, still radiates the heat that causes her heart to tremble. She approached him, leaving behind the wreckage of their common history, as if they were turning into ashes. In this moment, Byum suddenly noticed that. She looked at him with surprise and asked why he was looking at her. Then she pointed to herself. It is not the first time he sees someone drinking. Biomatai confessed that he was jealous. He accused her of sitting in front of him and drinking, thinking about another man. He won. She disdainfully called him frivolous and noted that because of his face expressions, others, apparently, are easily exposed to his charms. He replied that she knew everything. However, Bumta insisted that she could not do anything, and does not seem aware at all. On this, Nakes waved away from his words, telling him not to argue with adults. Nakesa whispered in his ear that she was 23 years old. She took a bottle and drank a volley. Bamta noticed that Nakes was drunk, but she stubbornly denied. No matter how much it was, I could not ignore the fact that he is too young. While she comprehended her, immersed in her reflections, she involuntarily leaned against his shoulder. Beyonce, feeling her emotions, asked if she was happy from victory. He noted that she is a little like a villain. He noted that she had been upset earlier when the guy met with a girl who was 8 years younger than him. Now she drinks with someone who is younger. He then asked if she's still seeking revenge, saying that he did not mind if she was using it. She lingered for a moment, thinking, but eventually rejected this thought, considering it too good. When she is, and pointed out in the right direction, but who stubbornly refused to return home. Further on Taifa, she acknowledged that her words were a little careless, and she thought whether it was worth staying with him. At the height, under the influence of alcohol, he looked at him and noted that he looked simply incredibly attractive. She noted that after drinking, he disappears the ability to filter the utterance. Boom waved away from her words, claiming that he was always like that. Boom reminded her that she had previously thrown him because of his youth. The confused Nahesa asked him to silence and asked who he imagined himself, behaving as an adult. She reproached him for being inexperienced, although she lived for 10 years longer. If he continues to say so, she threatened to quarrel. In despair, he stepped on his shoes. Mintel jokingly went with her to the hospital. She pressed him to her, stepping on the tips of her fingers. In spite of what was felt, in a state of intoxication, the name Nias kissed him, hugging firmly.